So what gave you the courage to start then? Like to start late and say, you know what, this is the year I'm going to go on my first international trip.
I have to give credit to my girlfriend, Natalie.
Yay.
Whenever we
Done
met,
that.
yeah, go Natalie. Yeah, she always had that bug. I mean, she started like traveling, I think at 18 or 19, and so she's very well traveled. And when we met, she was like, "Do you have your passport?" I was like, "No, but I can get it."
And she went on a second date. She must have liked you.
Yeah, our second date was
If she's
actually
my kind of a girl, she would have run away from that question. No passport, no second date. So good
She
on
had
her.
that was one good thing about having a podcast is that there was a lot of material for her to go back and get to know me, so to
That's
speak.
hilarious.
So I think
Yeah.
that, she was like, okay, there's something here, I can work with this. But
Okay.
and I'm an adventurous person. Like I'm a say
Yeah,
yes to
obviously.
life person. It was really just like it was a blind spot in my life where I just for whatever reason, I mean, it was like always on my radar, like, oh, I'm going to go see the world. I'm going to go travel, but I never prioritized it. I just, whatever reason, I just never did it. And then I met her and she was like, you need to, spread your wings a little bit. And so, yeah, I have been, but I've only been to Latin America so far. Which is amazing. I freaking love it, and it just makes me thirsty for more.
Yeah. Yeah, Latin America was my first trip as well. I mean, I was 18. And it's like not a beginner's place if you've never traveled before. So well done you. Like, yeah, you should definitely get out to Europe and plan a lot of time for Europe, obviously, because like how do you pick where to start? It's such a big place.
I don't know. Let me ask you that question. Where would you start if you were starting somewhere in Europe? What's the first place you would?
Okay, if it's your first place, then I would go to Italy. And that sounds like such a boring answer, but like if it's your first time, you got to go to Italy, like especially as a bike packer. It is bikepacking paradise. You've got Alps and Dolomites, you've got coast, you've got island, like you've got so much. And then you've got like Italian culture and Italian food. I think it is one of the best bikepacking destinations in the world. And I know that's such a boring answer. I meant to say like really cool places you've never heard of, but like Italy's amazing. If you've never been to Europe, I think it's just going to fit all the cliches that you want to see in Europe as well.
Yeah.
Like good Italian culture. I think that's where I would start. And then I would go east and then I would do Eastern Europe. Really amazing places out there.
Yeah, I think Italy is high on our list. So Natalie and I are talking about doing a bike tour, bike packing trip in Europe somewhere. And so I've actually been polling people I've been talking to. I'm like, where would you go? And Italy does keep coming up, but like, I really, if I'm going to go to a place, I really want to immerse myself in the food and the culture and the art and the scenery. Like I want all of it. I don't want to only go out into the mountains and never, get to experience like, well,
Okay, yeah.
what is Italy like? And I do think that from what I've looked at, it looks like Italy is the type of place where you can go and it's a nice mix of everything essentially.
And the culture always finds you. I think it's a really big difference in the mountain culture in Europe versus what we're used to in North America is that like it's never quiet. You're never alone. There are refugio huts that you're going to meet like lots of locals that are out doing their own sports. Like going to the mountains isn't as quiet as an experience in the Alps as it is in the Rockies. So even if you do pick a total trail adventure, you're going to get so much culture versus what you'd be used to in North America.
Is that because there's more people like outdoor recreating and more
Oh,
opportunities? Like,
population density, like Europe is, if you look at it on a map and how many people live in it, like there's
yeah.
population density. Yeah, and huge mountain culture, especially in a place like Italy. The mountain sport culture is so active that if you're on a trail, you're going to meet lots of cool people.
So
And
where
they'll all be
was
doing
your
something like harder than you and faster than you, and you'll just be like, shit, every granny here is stronger than me. Cool place.
Fair enough. I live in Texas at sea level, so I feel like everywhere I go, we don't have elevation. I can compete with you on heat, maybe. Maybe that's where I have an
Okay, that's
area.
good. That'll help you. That'll help in Italy most of the time.
Good. Where was your first international trip?
I went to Venezuela when I was 18 and I didn't speak any Spanish. It was like, I think when you don't even know how much trouble you're about to get into, it makes it easier to get into it. Yeah, I was such a dumb gringa. Yes, I went to Venezuela on I took a year out after school and went and got my dive master, and I was just a little scuba diving hippie for 6 months in Venezuela.
Oh, wow. 6 months?
Yeah, yeah.
So you graduated high school. You didn't do what I did and dropped out. I'm assuming you graduated and you're like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, everyone knew what they were doing. Everyone had already applied to university, and I was like, wait, when did you guys do that? I didn't do it yet. And just, that total existential dread and anxiety, being a teenager and feeling like your life path is set out and you know exactly how it's going to end because your parents are telling you it should end the ways that theirs did. You're just going to end up in the same type of house, like in another suburb doing the same stuff. So yeah, I took some time off, went to Venezuela, and then came back, worked at a job, and then did university. And that was boring as well. And then I had the same thing happened when I finished university. I was like, I don't want to go get a job. This sounds so horrible. So with all the money that I had, which was not very much, I bought a touring bike and figured out how to ride a bike. The rest is history.
Wow. That first or that first trip to Venezuela, was that a solo trip or did you go with friends or?
No, it was solo. No, all my friends were going on the normal path. They just thought I was having a mental breakdown. Yeah, I don't think any of them took a gap year.
That is insane. That is so crazy and so impressive. What
I
is
know
that
that now,
about?
but at the time I didn't know. Like at the time I was like, this is normal because I've thought of it. Like I didn't know how dangerous these places could be. I didn't know that traveling alone was strange or anything like that. I just thought, yeah, scuba diving sounds amazing. I love the water. I love the sea. I'll go do that. I want to learn Spanish. So I just went. And then afterwards, I think everyone was like, oh my God, did you really do that? And I didn't, I was like a dumb 18-year-old. I just didn't know that what I was doing was potentially brave and risky. It just
Yeah.
seemed like a good idea at the time, as they say.
That's a kind of an easy write-off, it feels like. I'm going to push back slightly because you have this trajectory in your life that started maybe at 18 where you're like, I'm going to sign myself up for the unknown and do it solo. And I mean, fast forward to Kyrgyzstan and, completely unknown, completely uncharted territories. No one's ever done it before. And you go and do that. So like, it seems like it's more of like your personality or some type of character trait that kind of allows you to do that. Cause I don't think that's in most people's
Yeah.
wheelhouse,
I guess what I mean is that I didn't know that was special. And I didn't know that people didn't have that. Like I didn't think I was weird or special or anything like that. I just thought it was a completely normal idea. I didn't think I was being courageous. And then I guess as I did more and I grew up and kind of got feedback from other people about how I lived my life, I realized, and especially getting people, emailing me and asking me all the time, how on earth do you do this? Can you please tell me how? And I would go, what's the barrier? I don't understand. And then I kind of, through soul searching, kind of figured out where the bravery lay. But yeah, I genuinely did all these things at the time because it just seemed like a good way to do things. It just seemed like fun. I didn't think, wow, I'm going to blow everyone's minds and be this amazing solo expedition person. I just genuinely thought it was normal and fine.
Yeah. Where did the idea to go to Venezuela come from? Like, were you just perusing the internet or like, how did you say, yeah?
I think there was like a backpacker's place that hooked up people who didn't speak good Spanish with this dive instructing course. And it was like, you can work at this dive shop and then they'll teach you Spanish. So I think I just found this website that was like for backpacker kids, mainly from Europe. And I was like, that sounds like fun. I'll just do that. Yeah. There was really very little thought that went into it. like very little.
Yeah. Was that one of those like setups where you like stay at a place, they take you scuba diving, they teach you Spanish, like it's all like you stay there, it's
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is a good baby step for a first time leaving home 18-year-old
Yeah.
girl. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did a podcast episode of School of the World, which is in Costa Rica. And I
Oh
was
yeah.
that are you familiar with it?
Yeah. Do they have a
No.
boat? Do they have a boat?
I
Or
don't know.
okay.
School of the World is yeah, he's a bikepacker that lives in Georgia. Really interesting story. Like I think he went to Costa Rica when he was 21 or something, just, a kid in college and ended up staying there a week. And then he went back and stayed 6 months. And then he went back and stayed a year and built a house by hand. And then 25 years later, he like bought this school from this guy that he knew. And now he owns this school in Costa Rica but it was completely unfamiliar to me. I'm like, oh, there's kind of like, it's like a jumping off point. It's like kind of it's like a built-in community where you can go. I took Spanish class, I took surfing. They introduced you to the culture. Because we're cyclists, he like toured us around on bikes in Costa Rica. But yeah, it was a really cool experience. I didn't even know that those existed, until a year ago.
That's really cool. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. It's fun seeing the world. Once you open that book, it's like you just never want to put it down, I think. At least if you're the right type of person, it's like it really speaks to you.
Yeah, I think some people realize that they have like a nesting personality and that travel is quite stressful and draining. And you can still definitely love it, but then it just makes you love your house more. But then, yeah, I think there's more people that want to adventure, that want to explore, that want to like understand this earth that we live on and the people that we share it with. And yeah, and I think it always looks really scary from the outset. And then once you start traveling, yeah, it just never stops because then you want to go back to places and there's more places. And I think you can spend your whole life and never read the whole book.
I love that quote. The world is a book. Those that don't travel only read one page, I think.
Yeah, that is a good one. And it's really true, I think.
Yeah. How common do you think that quote is? I have an argument with a friend.
Pretty common. Yeah, I think it's going to be on the walls of a lot of like 25-year-old girls' bathrooms kind of thing.
Of like School of the World and places like that.
Yeah. It's still
all right,
fine.
So what's that?
You can still say it if you want to.
Oh, I'm going to. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I love that quote. But I had never heard it until like recently. And again, I think, it's my girlfriend. I'll say it wasn't just a friend. But she's always like, it's such a basic quote. And we've had this conversation where I'm like, I do think it speaks to me not traveling more. And like, she's like, I feel like I've seen that on the wall of like 10 different hostels that I've stayed in, over and I'm like,
hostel thing.
yeah. And you're around other travelers and like-minded people, and it probably comes up in conversation. But me in like the armpit of Texas without a strong like outdoor and traveling culture and a person who like historically hadn't really traveled outside the United States, I heard that quote for the first time like a couple years ago, and I was like, yes, that speaks to me. So I'm a little basic, but that's okay. I'm just getting.
That's fine. That quote is still making the rounds. I think good for the quote.
It's like a good book, right? It's like why are classic books classic? And that's something that I've kind of like reinforced. I love to read. And lately I've been just like consuming all of the classics, like just reading and I'm like, damn, I mean, there's some good ass writing and good books. And that's the thought that like came to me is like, there's a reason why these books have stood the test of time and people are still sharing them and still talking about them. And so I'll throw that quote in that umbrella as well. It's like, no, it stood the test of time. It's a good quote.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
All
That's
right.
your
I'm
next
glad
tattoo.
what's that?
It's your next tattoo.
Oh, you see, yeah, I got some tattoo. I got Bikes for Death right there. That's
I like that.
my business card.
That's the way to do it.
Whenever I
And
meet
you never
people,
forget what you do.
yeah. In case I'm like, what do I? Oh, yeah, that's right. At least I didn't get it on my forehead. So let's fast forward to. I want to touch on the bike touring since this is the Bikes for Death podcast.
Yeah,
so you
talk about bikes,
went to university and you went bike touring. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, where did the idea come from? Had you been a cyclist before? So just another crazy on a whim. Oh, I think I'm just going to get a bike and go ride.
Oh yeah, massive on a really dumb whim. I started running marathons and and like stupid marathons, horrible. Don't do them. But to cross train for them, I was going to spin classes, and so a couple hours a week, I'm in a spin studio, and I loved that. I had so much fun, and so I thought, and I was in my, I was becoming a real hippie, of course, and thought I really want to go to the Yukon. I'd never been to the north of Canada. Like I traveled Canada really well, but never the north. So I knew I wanted to go to the Yukon. I wanted to go there by human power, being a little hippie. So I was like, well, I love those spin classes. I bet you I could just get a bike and it'll just be exactly like that outside. So I went and bought a bike in Calgary and yeah, really didn't know anything about it. I didn't have a phone at the time. So when I went to leave on the trip, I was up the night before on YouTube watching repeatedly videos, like basic videos of bike maintenance, like how to fix a puncture. I didn't know there were tubes inside of my tires when I bought the bike. They just sold me the bike.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I genuinely didn't know that's how the tires stayed up. I did not know anything. So I had a handwritten note what to do if the tire went flat, like how to get the tube out and put in another one. And that was just in my handlebar bag, how to fix the bike. It was, yeah, I mean, I probably cried over something every single day on that tour because it was just so overwhelming to be so clueless. And this bike shop, I mean, yeah, they wouldn't tell me about the tubes, but they insisted I couldn't get to the Yukon unless I was clipped in. So homegirl's never been cycling before, definitely clipped me into that thing. And so I was falling off the bike all the time, the time, crashing the little bike.
That's bad advice.
So I crashed and cried my way all the way up to the Yukon, and it's a trip that took about a month. And it was amazing. Like, I had my little tent, and I loved that. I loved the Rocky Mountains so much. It's where I grew up. And then I started to meet, especially once I got really far north into the Yukon, where we met up with like the Cassiar Highway. Obviously, a lot of bike tourists are on their way to or from Alaska that way. So then you start meeting other bike tourists on the road, and I never met them before. I'd never met the bike touring scene. And then, do you remember Crazy Guy on a Bike? You remember that website?
Yep.
Like all we had back then. So someone told me about this website. So the next time I was at, now I'm really going to sound old, an internet cafe, because I didn't have a phone at the time. In an internet cafe, I went on Crazy Guy on a Bike. And then there was just like all these people talking about all these places all around the world that they were just traveling by their bike. They weren't taking the bus. And I was just it was like, I was like, okay, I'm home. I want to be part of this, whatever this vibe is. I still don't get this bike and how to get on and off of it without crashing. But like, I want a piece of this. I want to move all day long. I want to sleep in my tent. And yeah, slowly started to learn how to do the bike stuff.
Was that a solo trip as well? And how far, how many days was that?
Yeah, so I think it was just over 2,000 kilometers. And yeah, it took me roughly a month.
Holy shit.
I have 4 panniers on my bike. Like 4 big, like I was 21. What I could afford as far as equipment goes, it's not like the nice bike packing stuff I have now. Like I just had the heaviest, dumbest crap on my bike.
That is
I couldn't
insane.
pick it up. I couldn't pick up my bike on my own without taking some panniers off.
Oh, hell no. No one could. The world's strongest man probably couldn't lift that bike.
Yeah.
So I am just blown away. Like, how much forethought went into that trip? 2,000 miles. You're just like, what gave you the audacity or the bravery or the idea that like you could do that?
Cluelessness is what gave it to me, because if I knew what cycling 2,000 kilometers felt like and how long it would take, I would have never gone, but I had no idea. I just looked at the map and it was like, oh yeah, Whitehorse is about 2,000 kilometers from where you are. So I was like, well, you could have just said any range of numbers and words to me right now. And I was like, well, I want to do this. I don't have a job. I've just finished school. I've got no purpose in my little life, but I own this shiny steel bicycle. And yeah, it was the cluelessness. That was the audacity. I had no idea. And I had nowhere else to be. I had the whole summer. It was early June that I left. So I was like, it doesn't really matter how long it takes. I'll get there when I get there. And when I get there, I'll figure out what to do with my life. But, it just didn't really matter.
That's amazing. I love that so much. I wish I had more of that. I wish I had more of that ignorance.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Ignorance is bliss.
I've grown up and I know how to like read maps really well, and I know how much, and I have experience, which is useful, but it also, can make you more cautious. So, back then I had no experience, and that was.
But it hasn't stopped you. It hasn't stopped you. The knowledge, all these experiences, the trials, like whatever you faced, I mean, it hasn't stopped you. You've kept it going like all of these years. What do you think it is about you that like has an idea to go to Venezuela or ride their bike 2,000 miles up to the Yukon, and with no experience, very little preparation, very little understanding of like what it is you're actually doing? Like, what is it about you, do you think, that allows you and maybe motivates you and pushes you to go and just try it?
I think it's curiosity. I think I'm not okay with wondering and not getting the answer. So if it comes across my mind that I'd like to go to the Yukon by human power, then I'll stay awake that night thinking, could I? Will I? Like, what would happen? What would it be like? And I would hate to not know. Someone else is going to find out. I want to know. And the only way for me to know would be to march down to a bike shop and ask for one bicycle, please, and buy it and go ride to the Yukon. I think it's just that, I wouldn't be satisfied with not trying these stupid ideas that pop into my head.
Where did the idea to ride to the Yukon, like, did you know some people that were bike tours? Like, how did you even find out that was a thing? Or
what? The summer before, I'd been in Banff, which is kind of close to where I grew up, and there was a sidewalk sale at an outdoor shop, and I needed a tent. And the guy that I bought the tent from, he was like, this tent's really good because the poles are shorter, so you can put it in a bike pannier. And I was like, I don't know what this man has just said to me, but that sounds like the tent I need. And so I bought the tent, and I kept on saying to people, I've got this really great tent. You can take it bike touring. And they didn't even have a bike. So I think I had to do it all just to take my tent on a little trip. I have no idea. I'm just astonished that, maybe. If you want to believe that the universe serves the things that you need, I think cycling just like made itself come to me, because I definitely didn't go looking for it.
I think you're right. I think you bought a great tent and you're like, all right, tent, I spent all this money on you. Like, let's see what you can do. I'm curious.
Yeah, let's take it.
It wasn't even about you. Whatever. It was about getting your tent out into the outdoors, And
I spent 200 Canadian dollars on that tent. That was a lot of money for me back then.
Yeah, exactly. You can't let it sit in the closet and go to waste. You got to take it to the Yukon.
No, there's too many tents wasting away in closets right now. People got to take their tents out.
That's right. That's so funny. I posted on social media yesterday. Someone posted like one of my titanium cups from Bikes for Death. And I, it's always funny. I'm like, oh, look at where my appliances are going out in nature, like living these wonderful lives. And it's always nice to me whenever I see people, they take my merchandise and they take it to a beautiful view. And I'm like, a piece of me is out there. But yeah, take your equipment outside. This isn't about really you. Cool.
Yeah.
Don't put it in the closet.
Give it a good life.
All right. Let me ask you this question. It's kind of a fun question. By the way, I wrote this down. You crashed and cried your way all the way to the Yukon, which, by the way, I think would make a great title for a next book, potentially.
That is good.
or a paper or an article or something like that. That was a good one-liner, Jenny. You nailed
I'm
it.
sure I've never even written that before. That's amazing. I am going to remember that. Thank you.
You just did. Yeah. Yeah, your book is chock full of like great one-liners. So I actually listened to the audiobook, but then I bought the copy because I want to read it and be able to like take notes, because I was like listening on all my rides and everything. But we'll get into the book, but like, yeah, I was like, oh man, I want to be like underlining shit. So I had to get a hard copy too. All right. So this is kind of a fun question, but also kind of a big one. Let's say you're at a fancy, let's say you're like at the pre-party for the Pulitzer Prize for your book Solo, and you're at the bar.
That's
and
dream.
Yeah, that's the dream. You're at the bar and somebody comes up to you that doesn't know you and they say, what do you do? What do you do for a living? How do you answer that question?
You know, when people ask me what I do for a living, I just say I'm a writer, and I hope that there are no follow-ups, because I feel so silly when I say what I do for a living.
Well, I'm going to push back. I am going to ask a follow-up question. Oh, really? Okay. What else do you do? What do you write about?
I say, I just write about the outdoors and adventure kind of stuff.
You're going to make this tough on me, aren't you?
This is how I treat people in public when they ask me what I do.
All right. Well, let's say you're on a podcast with Patrick from Bikes for Death, and he asked you
that's
what...
big time. That's big time. You said it was a Pulitzer. Now all of a sudden we're on Bikes for Death.
Yeah, I know. I had to ramp up this. You're being a difficult customer, but give us a picture of like, I mean, introduce yourself to like people who haven't heard of Jenny Tuff before. Like, how do you encapsulate like all of the stuff that you do for people that aren't familiar with you?
Do you think it's normal to find that a really difficult question to answer?
Yeah, that's why I said it's kind of a fun question, but it's kind of a big question too. I think it's like pretty unfair, but in my defense, it's either I have to do it or you have to do it. And so I think,
you're just like calling dibs on not doing it.
Yeah. I'm just like, no, she knows herself. She knows who she is.
I'm tempted to like Google myself right now and just try to remind myself what the first paragraph is of this.
I think you are a extremely adventurous person. Like, you are doing things that I had never even heard of, like legitimately never even heard of, never knew it was a thing, never knew people were doing this. You're doing world first, you're winning bikepacking races, you're doing everything. And then there's like all the media that surrounds it. I feel like overwhelmed and underprepared for this conversation, because like there is so much stuff out there. You've written multiple books. There's like endless videos and films that you could watch. And then, like you said, you're a writer. So there's endless writing. There's like so many things that I can read. I feel like I've done so much research, and just like getting to know you and reading everything and watching all the videos to prepare for this episode. There's just, it's so much. So that's my stab at.
I love that you did your homework, but gosh, I feel bad. It's a lot.
Why?
It's a lot to take on. It's a lot of time.
But this is my job.
Yeah, it's my job.
Yeah, it's my job. And I mean, it's a pretty good gig, like.
Yeah. You get to speak to cool people all the time. I listen to you on my bikepacking races. Did you know that?
No way.
Last time I was listening to your voice, it was probably 3 a.m. in Rwanda, and I was going up a hill. You were speaking to Anna Jagger. And it was just really nice to just like kind of sit. It's really nice, I think, when you're on a bikepacking event, because especially if you're alone and then you're just in your own head all the time. But then if you listen to a podcast about something you're actually interested in, it's kind of like you can just sit in on a conversation and you'll ask questions that I wanted asked of her, and she'll talk about, especially like hearing her talk about the Tour Divide that she'd been successful on. Then you hear someone who's totally like jazzed about finishing races while you're currently on a race. You kind of need to hear that energy from someone who's like gone and done it. It was really nice. So thanks for that.
Well, you're welcome. That makes my day. it's like, it's so mind blowing. Like, you just record a podcast and put it out in the universe, and you never know who's going to listen to it. And I've had so many experiences. Like, I go and cover the end of the divide, and so I'm just like hanging out at the end of the Tour Divide and like talking to all these people and like all these like people I consider famous and I like legends, and I'm just like, and they're telling me all these episodes that they listened to, and hey, remember that time when you interviewed this person? They talked about that. I'm like, you're blowing my mind right now that you're listening. So I appreciate that. And mostly like, I'm so grateful that it's going out and it's doing something, like it's being inspirational. It's helping people get through their bike rides or the bike races. Like, that's the biggest payoff.
Look, I mean, this is still a really niche sport. I mean, it feels like it's a really big sport at the moment, but actually in your day-to-day life, in your physical community, how many bike packers do you know? Like,
oh yeah,
you try to speak to your friends about it. One, they're sick of it. Two, they don't understand. And then, yeah, you need these little community places like a podcast. For our crazy weirdo bike packers that we are.
You're absolutely right, and I think it's not so well adopted. I mean, running, you're a big runner, obviously, and like the running community is a much more like, there's probably 100 different running clubs in my town. 100 is an exaggeration, huge, but there's a lot of running clubs. Hardly any cycling clubs and zero bikepacking adventure clubs. I mean, there's one other guy that lives
distance racing. You get back down to like 500 people on the whole planet. Right. Do it. So,
right. Yeah. All right. Did I do a good enough job? I think we'll let this episode speak to who you are, and people can just listen and to decide for themselves. I won't make you answer that question. I
pivoted really well away from that. I don't know if you saw how professional that was, that I just went on a totally different tangent.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm going to have to keep an eye on you.
Yeah.
Every single question I ask, you're going to be like, actually.
What I can tell you is do the politician thing.
Yeah, good. Let's start with, well, I guess we've started a while ago, but let's get into your book, Solo. I genuinely, it was such a great book. And I have to tell you that since you're telling me you listen to me, I'm going to tell you I listen to you too. And your book, Power, like I only listened to it while I was on bike rides. I'm training for like 3 different races right now. And so I'm kind of in training mode. And so I've been taking it as my companion. And you're right, like it's super helpful to be like listening to somebody doing hard things and like overcoming things when you're in the middle of doing something. Yeah. You're like, it's a really good kick in the teeth. And I have you read Wild by Cheryl Strayed?
Cheryl Strayed one.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Come on.
Okay. I figured, but I didn't want to assume. But yeah, so I read.
I'm the demographic.
Yeah, I assume.
I watched it.
Yeah, my girlfriend, so she gave it to me as a gift for a birthday present, and we kind of read it, at the same time, and then we just watched the movie like last week. But I just finished reading Wild for the first time, and that's another just amazing book. And then immediately after I read Wild, I read your book, and it was like wild to the extreme. It was like a perfect,
very different character. No heroin.
No heroin, maybe no sex addiction. You didn't talk about that in your
no.
But you have your own like challenges and things that, I mean, everybody does, right? But like what, and there were so many parallels between the 2 books, between like being a solo female adventurer, a lot of the fears, uncertainties, placating by men, like all this was like, it was like just kind of like Wild 2.0. Not to say it was like a carbon copy, but there was just,
I've never been compared to Cheryl Strayed, and I think my imposter syndrome just exploded in the background. Just like,
oh no, huge. Yeah, I think it's on the walls back there.
Yeah, what a mess.
Yeah, no, I mean, how could you be imposter syndrome? Like you did all of the things that are in the book, like,
I know.
and you wrote
That's
about it.
sometimes
So
weird to me,
there's,
actually. When I have to promote the book and I tell people what it's about, I'm like, wow, did I really run that far? That seems like quite a lot. Like,
did I do that?
you tuck those things away in the back, like especially things that were physically arduous. You know what it's like? You get home and you're like, you just tuck it away. You just kind of forget about how hard it was. And then, yeah, I mean, half of my career is I have to stand on stages and tell people about this book to convince them to buy it. And sometimes, yeah, I hear the words coming out of my mouth and I'm like, gosh, did I really? That's so cool for me. That
Yeah.
seems really unlikely that I could accomplish that.
It's it's so weird. I think we all do this. We disassociate ourselves from our accomplishments, and not only our accomplishments, but the pain that was associated with them.
Oh, massively. Yeah.
And I assume I have no. I'm a high school dropout again, so I'm just full of assumptions, but that it speaks to like the evolution of our species, where it's just like, okay, move forward, move forward, move forward, and at the same time forget about how hard things are. Because if you really internalize like how bad your feet hurt and how scary it was and all of the woes that come with, oh fuck, I ran that far and I did that
Yeah.
for so many days, if you like sit with that, it's like you're not able to, it would prevent you maybe from moving
Totally.
forward.
I mean, I'm not a mother, but there are women out there who have more than one child. So they obviously found a way, so maybe it is evolutionary that we have to somehow think that hard things are fine and we'll do them again.
Jenny, you took the words out of my mouth. That was the exact like description or example that I was going to bring up. And the one that blows my, I'm obviously not a mother either. I have two daughters, and I've been on that side of the pregnancy. And I've said that to like, I have two ex-wives. I'm not bragging. Yeah, racking them up. No more for me. That was enough. But I have a daughter with each ex-wife, and so like, but I've said to both of them historically, I'm like, I get like having a kid once, but how do you do it a second time?
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. I think we're just like, we kind of evolved to have short memories for some reason.
Yeah, and just look at the beautiful things that come out of it. Like in your case, daughters, in my case, really amazing memories of mountains I stood on top of and felt good about myself.
Yeah, yeah. That's the other flip side of it, is that so instead of like only focusing on the pain and how hard it was, for some reason, what like sticks with you is like the good parts, like the views, the mountains, and you're like, yeah, I want to go back that. I want to go experience.
I mean, thank goodness our brains work that way.
Oh
imagine
God,
if
yes.
I think we dwell on mistakes, but I mean, dwelling on pain, that'd be a totally different thing to have to deal with. Like it's amazing that I can finish any of these events. I mean, you said you're training for 3 ultras. I mean, it's that type 2 fun thing, which maybe we've overused that term, but it's so true that during the thing, you're like, this is awful. I can't do this. And then the second you're not doing it, you're like, that was the best. Did you remember that bit where it was this and that? And you're just like so jazzed about it. Yeah, thank goodness our brains work that way.
Oh, I'm so glad. It is interesting though, because like as a podcaster, I'm always like, so tell me how hard it was. And, like tell me the worst thing that's ever happened to you or whatever. I'm exaggerating slightly, but I mean, you want to, like, and not just to be like, to like blow it up into this massive thing, but also to like educate people like, okay, what are you really getting yourself into when you sign up for these kinds of things? But like people have a really difficult time capturing like how difficult something is, and I agree. I think it's great because it allows us to keep pushing forward,
This is why, this is maybe a bit of a pivot, but why I kind of hate that most of the films and media will always revolve around the people that won. Because people that won were the ones that didn't have a disaster typically. They were the ones that got away with it. Like, you got to speak to the people in the middle of the pack. Like, they're the ones who have disasters coming left, right, and center that maybe overcame something. Like, that's where the stories are, and that's where most of us are going to end up riding the event. So I think Yeah, that's what I want to sign up for, as a podcast that interviews just everyone, not just that like one person who just shrugs and they're like, yeah, it just worked
Yeah.
out. I had a tailwind and I didn't get sick and won the
Yeah, my
race.
body worked fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
I got the
exactly.
right
I'm like,
food. I
no,
hit all the
here, like
resupply points.
I was in Rwanda a couple of weeks ago on that race, and there was a guy in my kind of pace group who had a broken finger. He broke his finger right before the race, and we're racing on drop bar bikes, people. And he just rode the event with a splint on one hand on all this like gnarly ass gravel. And I was like, that's way cooler than the people at the front to me right now, that this guy is riding this event with one hand. Like,
Yeah.
what is that?
I couldn't agree more. I'm definitely never going to be at the front of a race for a variety of reasons, but like the most people like that listen to this podcast or do this kind of stuff, I mean, just going and doing one of these events is huge, right? And like just finishing it is huge. And so that's been like a real like focus of my podcast, is trying to capture like the full breadth of the human experience and like stories through these adventure sports. And like the way I look at the top of the field is I like those because it just shows what human potential is. And I think that like when you can connect to like that potential, you don't have to go and win a race, but just like, oh wow, it unlocks something in you. You're like, oh, people can ride to the Yukon. People can, run across Kyrgyzstan completely unsupported. Like what? Like people can do that. And then if you know that, you can find a way to like internalize that in your life. But I never want like the podcast to be like, oh, you should be the ultra best of the ultra fit. But I do like because that's the way it works in my life, is I'm like, I see people that do like just the most amazing, crazy things, like Alex Honnold free solo El Capitan. Fuck no, never want to do it. Scares the shit out of my palms, get sweaty just thinking about it. But holy shit, people do that?
Yeah.
And that's the part of it that I like. And then I try to like do episodes where like, it's like more regular people that go and do this kind of stuff too, and share from that.
I think you bring out
side.
the regular people, like Anna Jagger's episode. I really liked it because she just kind of like shrugged it off that she just fucking won the Tour Divide. And she's like, well, I don't know. I have an active job, so I guess I'm fit. And you're like, oh, okay. She's not an elite, or doesn't think she's an elite athlete, doesn't train like one, doesn't have a coach and a sponsor and all those things. She just kind of was like, oh, I'm just fit. And I just like riding my bike. It was really good.
You find that so much. I mean, obviously my sphere is bikepacking. But I think it probably speaks to like endurance athletes as a whole, that you do see that a lot, where like people can, like Courtney Dauwalter in the running world.
Biggest fan right here. Biggest fan.
I don't follow her career super closely. But like in the beginning, I would just remember like reading a lot about her. She was a school teacher and like training in her off time, and her diet was just like pizza and beer and chips or whatever. Like, and she was going out and just decimating the field. And I'd be curious to get your take, but I wonder if it's just like with endurance sports, it's like, it really comes down to, I mean, yes, you have to be physically strong, but the mental side, it's that mental toughness that you have to tap into. And that opens up the field to anybody to be mentally tough and endure hard things.
Yeah, I think it's really true. I mean, I wouldn't downplay the physical side. I mean, especially in Courtney's case, like she was, I don't know American terms, like a state champion cross country skier when she was a kid. Like she did come from background, but when you hear her talk about running, and just using her as an example, like you hear her talk about it and the mindset that she goes into it with, it's clear that she's not just a better runner than most people, but she can control her mind better than most people. So I do think that in ultras, it's really fascinating. I remember speaking to James Hayden about this once, that in ultra bikepacking, it's kind of like you might need 5 or 6 good skills in any normal race, like your wilderness survival, your cycling, your eating, your ability to speak the language, like whatever it is. And you just go in with the skills that you have and you try to capitalize on them. So I think it is a really interesting place to do sports, because if you look at, the running side, we always compete in your gender and your age group, and potentially even like your ranking in your country or whatever it is. But bikepacking, we tend to compete for one podium, and there isn't even a podium there. We're all kind of there at the same time, and you'll be riding along someone who's twice your age and someone who's much younger, and people that have completely different bodies can move on to people with different bikes. We're all just coming from completely different places and can kind of ride alongside each other, because you just capitalize on the skill sets that you have and focus on what you can do really well. And I do think mindset makes or breaks it. I think you can't win a race on mindset alone. You do have to be strong, but you absolutely can't win a race without mindset. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just love, this is why I love endurance sports, is because I think it's like a great equalizer in many respects, because you do have to tap into like the full breadth of your resources to be able to like endure to the end. And yeah, the storylines that come through there, like it's why I love endurance sports in particular. You're not just honing one skill and you're really, really good at it. You're going to have like everybody's going to have like strong areas and weak areas, and they're just going to have to manage what they have and endure to the end, and I love it. All right. We got to talk. We're going to talk about solo.
Okay. I'll let you stick to your script. I'm sorry.
No, no, tangents are welcome. I have ADD. So like, tangents, tangents are just a part of my life. I don't even try to fight it. I just go wherever they go, and we'll get there eventually. But what is solo? I mean, if no one's ever read the book, like what is solo about?
I set a self-led challenge to run solo and unsupported across a mountain range on every continent. Journey was a little over 4,000 kilometers when you rack them all up. It took me 5 years to do them, because I did them all kind of individually. So it's about those 6 expeditions, those running expeditions where I was unsupported in the wilderness, so carrying everything I needed and navigating these mountain ranges. Some of them were world first expeditions. So it's about the journeys themselves and what I learned along the way and how I grew with the person. And that's what it's about. I haven't read it since I wrote it, so I don't actually.
You haven't?
No, I did the audiobook. The audiobook was the last time that I've opened that book.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not going to read it because I can't edit it now. That's the worst thing. Once the publisher prints it, you got to stick with what you said. And if you don't like it, like going back and reading your own work. I heard someone, this is a really bad analogy, but I heard someone say it's like smelling your own farts. Like something really weird about you if you need to do that. I don't go back and read my book.
That is so funny. And so, I mean, I can, I've had to force myself to go back and like listen to some of my episodes if I'm having a repeat guest on, sometimes I don't, sometimes I do, but it's like, you really have to like eat a shit sandwich, to take another nasty analogy. It's hard. You're like, oh fuck. It's really hard. The difference for me is like, if something's like super bad, I can like actually edit it and re-upload a different file. Like if I said
you
something,
own the podcast, you can do what you want.
I can do what I want.
Don't own my book. That's the worst thing people need to know about writing books. You don't own it. The publisher owns it. Once it's gone, it's gone.
So you're like, I think I remember what's in that book, but I don't even know.
No, people ask me really specific questions sometimes, and I'm like, did I? Oh, I don't remember that.
Did I do that?
I'm not going to read it back.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't blame you. I'll try not to ask you any too hard of questions, but like,
no, go for it. It's good to challenge me.
What? And I have notes too, so I might have the answer.
Okay, there we go. Fun quiz.
That's your like elevator pitch. You said you have to get up on stage and like tell people what the book is. That's what the book is. But like the first leg of your trip was Kyrgyzstan. Again, like you said, some of these were world's first. Nobody has ever done it before. I'm curious, like, and just to like elaborate that on that a little bit for the listening audience. So like when you ran across Kyrgyzstan, no one's ever done it before. And like the thing about what you did is you weren't necessarily following like roads or trails or anything. There wasn't like a developed route. Like you literally just, I assume, got on Google Earth or Ride with GPS or whatever app you use and like drew a line over mountains. And can you like elaborate on like that part of the process of like what that actually looked like to run across Kyrgyzstan and how you built your routes?
Yeah, it was really hard at the time. They've had a real tourism boom in the last few years, and it would be a lot easier now, especially with the Silk Road having done like 5 routes across it, and Komoot now being there. But at the time, there weren't good maps. If you went on Komoot or Ride with GPS or anything like that, it was just no data, and you just didn't know what went. So I did have to use satellite, Google Earth. There were maps available to buy, but they were done by the Soviets who had been in power 25 years previously. So they were 25 years out of date, and they were in Cyrillic, which I can kind of read, but not well enough to navigate a whole expedition on. So yeah, it was I think I had several routes kind of pegged down, and I was like, well, I'm just going to have to take this day by day. And sometimes it's not going to work, and sometimes it really didn't work. And sometimes it will, and we'll just go. And then I got there, and this is a land that has nomads, and that was what attracted me to it, was the nomads who live there, very much a life on horseback and living in yurts. These are people that don't travel by road either. So, and that's kind of something that I always tell myself about travel. And people always ask, like, how do you find food? How do you find where to live? And just go like, if people live there, there is a way to do it. It might not be your way. It might not be a way you're comfortable with. It might not be a way that you have an app for on your phone, but it will be possible. So I knew that the nomads were there, which means there has to be a way. So yeah, I was mainly on their trails, and that was amazing because I went there so nervous thinking, I don't know how to get there. I've looked at the map and there's no way across this little bit. And then you'd get there and there'd be lots of horse trails, and they'd be very thin, hard to follow trails, but they would be there. Or you would even see a horse literally going over it and just say, okay, we'll follow him. And so it felt like playing proper explorer, which was really fun because, of course, I think we all dream about being explorers. And I think we all dream like we are explorers, but we know that we aren't really, because the world has been discovered well and truly. There's a Wikipedia page for everywhere. There's a Lonely Planet for everywhere. Like, you're only really exploring in your own terms because someone else has already been there. But it really did feel like I got to play explorer. I got to go somewhere without a map. Like I wasn't carrying a map because there was no point. It was really cool. It was really exciting and really scary.
It's wild. It is so wild. Like, another example is you would just get to the base of a mountain and you just kind of eyeball how to get over, right? Like there's no trail, there's no map to follow. So you're just like, I guess I'll go that way and see how it goes. And I mean,
it's comfortable with site navigation, and site navigation when it works in the mountains is really, really fun. And I feel like no one's ever encouraged to do it because it's not like the super safe, nerdy way you're meant to have a map and compass at all times. But yeah, if there is no map, like it was in Days of Old, then site navigation is really fun.
How common, again, I've never heard of anybody doing this. Is there a whole nother niche sport of people that are fast packing across continents or across mountain ranges without maps, without roads? Like, is this a thing that I just don't even know about?
It's definitely becoming a thing. And I think when I did that first one, we didn't even call it fast packing because no one knew. This was just like idiots who didn't know how to backpack, right? Just like it just didn't exist. But now it's definitely becoming a thing. Now there are, products you can buy a fast packing backpack. Like these things do exist now. And yeah, there are crazy kids out there crossing entire countries. It's typically like in Europe, especially where there's a lot of wilderness routes are only 3 or 4 days long. It's becoming a real sport amongst the trail runners and the hikers in Europe to go fast packing over the weekend. It's really fun. So yeah, it's becoming a thing. It's far behind bike packing in terms of how popular it is and how many products you can buy for it and stuff. But it's becoming a thing. It wasn't then, but it's getting there. I'm starting to feel normal.
Yeah, it's just another iteration of you going into the unknown, literally, but also into like an unknown like genre of the sport.
But that was
How
what was
did
really freeing about it because there were no rules. You know, like if you
yeah.
come from cycling, there are rules, man. Like cycling has way too many rules and they need to F off. But like fast packing, it didn't even have a name. There were no rules at all. I just had to figure it out for myself. So like I got to make it all up as I went. And it's so wild to look back because now I know exactly how I would pack and I'm really like confident in how to do this. But back then I was like, I don't know. And I would just try using trekking poles and figure out because it's very different if you run with poles versus walk with them. And I just tried to decide what type of equipment I would like. Do I want a tent? No tent? Like I just had to do lots of experiments. There was no one I could ask. I couldn't Google it. I think there was there was a subreddit had, I think, 30 people on it. So it was like,
Wow.
yeah, it just wasn't cool. There was just no one I could ask. So I got to make up all my own rules and just do it the way that I wanted. And then when I went out to actually do it and start crossing these mountain ranges, you know, I'm alone in really big wilderness. It's a very freeing space where you're just like, well, okay, what would make sense for me? Let's not think about how you're meant to do this because there is no guidebook. What would make sense for me? What would feel good?
Yeah.
What would be safe? What would work?
Man, to hear you talk about it, it makes perfect sense. But like in our world, it seems, I don't want to say crazy, but it's wild. It seems crazy. I mean, because, you know, speaking back to like, you know, go to school, get the job, get the husband or wife, you know, have the kid. There's always rules, like you said in cycling. Like there's all these rules. There's events, and you start with running around your neighborhood, and then you do a half marathon, then you do a full marathon. Like there are just systems and rules, and whether they're like really strict or not, there's just the way people do things, right? It's just like the way people do these. And what you did, it makes perfect sense. Like, man, I just want to go have fun and experience it any way I want to. I don't want any rules, which really like speaks to me. I'm like, yes, but also, you know, there's just a lot of fear and uncertainty that comes with that level of exploration, you know?
I've always said that adventure is creative, or it should be creative. So if you think of it as a creative pursuit and you think of your adventure, your time, what you're going to do as a blank canvas that you get to draw. And of course, you're going to get inspiration from other creatives before you. Like Miles Arbor writes the best routes in the world. That's where you should just start. Like just go to bikepacking.com and like start with some ideas and then draw your own thing, you know, like create for yourself. I think adventure should be creative. I don't think it should be competitive as it usually is. I know that we're going to talk about racing, so maybe sometimes, but like, you know, if you're going to do an expedition, think of it as a creative pursuit.
Yeah, I really like that. And I like the like diversity and the creativity. I think that like you spoke to it, that's in bike packing. There is no like governing body. People are on all kinds of bikes with all kinds of, you know, wearing whatever. And like it does.
We have to keep that spirit alive, you guys.
Yes.
Like bikepacking guys, when you're commenting on the forums what someone else is riding in some race, just piss off. It's fun if we all do it our own way.
That is my not a mantra, but that's what I preach is like,
Oh yeah.
it is the uniqueness and the individuality that is currently in this sport. And I'm with you. I mean, Gus Morden said on the podcast, like the good thing is like there's passionate people who are like passionate enough to argue about it. But like at the same time, yeah, it's great that there's so much passion, but like we can't tell people how to recreate outside. Like we need to really, really, really praise people for going and running across Kyrgyzstan for the first time without, you know, it's like, just go do that. And like, it doesn't have to fall into any category and it doesn't have to be an official time. One of your quotes from your book that I just remembered You may not even know this is in there, but it says something like adventures don't need to be measured. They just need to be experienced.
Oh, that
Do you
sounds
remember
like me. That sounds like that's the thing I would say.
Yeah, which is great. And like to your point about like racing and stuff, obviously like there's people who like really care about winning and stuff, but like you can't go and ride 1,000 miles on a bike without a really strong like internal passion for like the outdoors and like self-propelled human power and all this stuff. Like it's not just, oh, I want to win, because there's so many factors. There's the weather and there's knee pain and there's mechanicals and things that can come up, like all these challenges that arise. Like it can't just be about like winning. I don't think like there's
We don't even get anything for winning. Like there's no money in bikepacking, so just like have a good time.
Yeah, there's definitely no money in bikepacking for sure. It's just so I just love it. I love what you did, because as a cyclist, and I'm a hardcore cyclist. Like I just started hiking recently, but my only claim to fame with running is I've done a half marathon trail run and then I quit. I'm like, okay, that was enough.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. I do acknowledge that. Well, not everyone's gonna like running.
But the good thing, the thing that like I like about like cycling is narrow-minded, and like you have to, well, yeah, it's not narrow-minded, but it's just limited to roads and trails. Otherwise, you're just hiking your bike. But the really cool thing about what you did is that on foot, it's literally, I mean, you're just walking across a field or running across a field and then swimming across a river and then climbing a mountain. And there doesn't need to be any limitations other than like your own physical ability, which is just like a really, to me, like a mind-blowing concept. I'm like, oh, it's why I started hiking, because I'm like, oh, well, there's places bikes can't go that I want to get to. And I used to be like I used to be a problem. Like if people are like, oh, let's go to this place, and I'm like, and they're like, let's do this. And I'm like, you didn't say bike one single time in that whole 5 sentences. I'm out. Yeah, I am out. Like I am not, I can't listen. I'm not interested. And I'm trying to, I've been like shifting that perspective and like stretching out.
It's fine. You know what you're about. You like your bike. I think it's fine.
I do. But the world is big and I want to experience it all. And like, it's the same thing as like travel is like, you know, it's all good. And the thing is like the outdoor experience, immersion in nature, self-reliance, like all those things are what really like speak to me. And bikes just happen to be my favorite modality. But, so with that said, like I'm really unfamiliar with the sport of running, and I don't know how much of my audience is like tuned into like what you did, but can you break down, I mean, and even like fast packing is new, but like what is fast packing as just like a baseline understanding for what it is you did?
It's really the same as bikepacking without the bike and without any mechanicals. So your backpack is going to carry all the same stuff. You know, I was in a lightweight bivvy most of the time, lightweight stove, some dehydrated, and then, no tools because nothing's going to break except for your feet.
Just duct tape for your feet.
Just duct tape for the feet, my friends, top advice. So it's basically that. And then again, no rules. Like you want to go as lightweight as possible and you want to move as fast as possible. And what that means for each individual can and should totally vary. So it's very much like bikepacking in that sense, that I think bikepackers differentiate themselves from bike touring, that they just say it's more about the ethos of traveling lighter and going faster and further and all those kind of things. And that's kind of fast packing versus long distance hiking, is we just try to pack lighter and we try to move faster. You run as much as you can, but there's obviously plenty of walking, especially when I'm involved.
You took the question right out of my head. So when I was reading your book or listening to your book, that was one of the questions I had, like, how much is she actually running? And I'm not trying to like throw shade, but just like 1,000 kilometers is a long time over, mountains and rivers and everything. Like how much of it are you like running and how much of it is like a fast walk?
say the uphills are all walked. No ultra runner runs up hills. Maybe Courtney does, but no one really. Yeah, so you walk up the hills, sprint down them, and then everything in between, you just, yeah, kind of just go with the body. And that was why I tried to kick off about not looking at my watch too much and worrying about what pace I was doing. Is, sometimes you run really well, sometimes it's a speed walk, sometimes you feel absolutely miserable and you barely move. Yeah, and I think those are the moments where I miss the bike the most, because the bike, in order to keep that thing upright, you have to keep going. Like there's no, if you're fast packing and you get tired, you could just say, well, I'll just walk for a little bit. But like on your bike, you don't have that choice. You gotta keep moving. And I think that
Unless
kind of
there's a
keeps,
downhill, then you get to coast.
and the downhill, you get to like have a snack and sit back and enjoy some bumps. But yeah, it's quite different in that sense. You do get to manage your pace a lot easier. But yeah, I would definitely walk. I would try to. I think it was more important to me always that I wanted to do these big days in terms of hours. So even though I could cover a bigger distance really fast if I just belted it and just ran really well, I think I preferred to just kind of have a big long day out in the mountains because that's what makes me feel really good. So I would kind of try to move at a more sustainable pace, which would be obviously a lot slower, and take big walking breaks or swimming breaks even sometimes.
No rules. You can do whatever you want.
No rules.
What were your goals for? Was it always going to be running across like 6 continents? Like, was that always the plan? Like, what were your goals with this huge project?
So I just wanted to run across Kyrgyzstan. I found out about this country called Kyrgyzstan, and then I was really obsessed. I was living in Scotland then as well, and I love Scotland, but I miss the mountains. I miss the big proper mountains. And so it's kind of about, and a curiosity in myself, that mountains are always where I felt at home, because home is never. I'm not used to having a physical home. I've traveled quite a lot in my life and moved around, and my parents are from different places, so we never were raised with a sense of physical home. But I always found that mountains give me that kind of peaceful feeling. So it was kind of a curiosity that I thought, what if I went to the Tian Shan Mountains, where I don't speak the language, where I don't know how to get around, where everything's completely different? Am I still going to feel that? And it just kind of spun out of control. I think I was looking at these mountains. I think I had the map open on my computer, just sat there on the couch with a glass of wine in hand, looking at this map. And, when you kind of scroll around maps and you think, oh, how would I cross it? And I think I originally was going to cycle. And then I was like, oh, it's only 1,000 kilometers across. If I went on my bike, if I flew all that way and I only cycled 1,000 kilometers, what a shame. I should slow this down. And, the glass of wine convinced me that I should try and run it. So it was only ever going to be that. It was just going to be the hardest thing I ever did in my life. And then I could say, wow, look at me. But I got back after doing it, and it was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. And then I got really depressed, and I was in a really, really low period. And like physically, I was messed up. I could not run. I could not ride. My legs were little twigs that couldn't carry me. So I didn't have my normal pillar of mental health, which was to just go for a run. Up until that point in my life, I had no other way to treat my mental health except for go for a run. And then I was at this festival giving a talk about my amazing run across Kyrgyzstan, which I was so bummed about now. And someone else said to me, she just said, oh, how are your post-adventure blues going? And I had never heard the term post-adventure blues. And it was just like, suddenly I went, that's it. That's exactly what I'm feeling right now. That's why I'm sad. It's because I just had this amazing time where I was moving my body. I was outside. I was out of my comfort zone. I was sleeping in a different place every night. I was seeing all these amazing things, feeling great. And now I'm, in 4 walls, and I'm in Edinburgh where it rains all the time and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, and then I realized that's all it was. And so the cure, of course, is to just open the map and say, well, what's next? Like this one adventure that you did, it's not the end of you. It's not, when people talk about once in a lifetime trips, that's just setting yourself up for feeling so bummed when it's over, because you said there was only one in a lifetime.
Yeah.
So once I said, okay, that's not once in a lifetime. What if we did it again? And, got out the glass of wine and the maps again and made a list of mountain ranges I wanted to do. And there were so many. I mean, there are so many more mountain ranges than I think I realized, because you think about the big ones, but you don't think about all the little ones. And so I thought, okay, if I just do one on each continent, then that would whittle this list down to like a good 6. And then that seems achievable and it gives me a purpose. And then I know, then it's a thing. Rather than people saying like, Jenny, what are you up to these days? Are you having a little breakdown? And I go, oh yeah, I just go on these trips where I just run around. No, now I have a project that I can tell people I'm running across a mountain range on every continent. Sounds like a thing. I made it up, but it's still a thing.
It sounds like a thing. It is. Yeah. It is a thing. Was it always your intention to write a book about it?
I think I assumed I would, just because I am a natural writer. So even if I don't have a commission to write for someone, I will write the trip anyways. It's how I process. When I got home from all those trips, I sat in front of my laptop for days on end and just let it out onto the page what I had gone through and what I had experienced. And it was just kind of the way I processed. So I think I assumed or hoped that at one point I would, but I wasn't cocky enough to know that I could and that would be I had anything worthwhile sharing. Because I'm going to admit, I don't really like the genre of adventure books very much. A lot of them just tend to be like trip diaries, which is fine, but a lot of them are, they're just about someone's holiday. Because ultimately, I know it's an expedition. I had this amazing thing. No one had done it, but ultimately it was my holiday. It was the thing that I wanted to do. Yeah. That I did. And how do you make that special for other people? And I think that's why I don't like the adventure genre very much, is that, I feel really bad saying that. I'm not going to name any names. I just think a lot of them just are these trip diaries about someone else having a nice time.
I'll make you feel better and echo what you're saying, that I too find them hard to ingest. I have quite a few on my bookshelf that haven't been read and maybe never will, and I won't say any names either. And it's not throwing shade. I think, we can both admit those have an audience that love them and they do a lot of good in the world.
I think if you are adventurous, it makes it hard because you're like, well, I want to do that. And I could do that and I will do that. So now I don't know why I'm reading about it and not just doing it.
Yeah.
But you got to make it about something. And I think that was, the only thing I wanted to write about. Cause otherwise it's just a million times. And there's probably a lot of passages in the book where it's once again, she rolls up her bivvy and starts running on sore legs. Every day starts that way. It gets boring really quickly.
Your book was excellent though. We're going to be honest now.
Appreciate all 5-star reviews, Patrick. Thank you very much.
I know. I haven't yet, but I was researching for this, and I was on your Amazon. I was like, okay, I made a mental note. I haven't done it yet, but I am going to do a 5-star review.
Apparently that's the only way to sell books these days is 5-star Amazon reviews. So.
And if you'll, after this episode, if you think it goes well, if you would give Bikes for Death a 5-star review, we would appreciate it.
I'm going to go with I already have, but I will. Dang. Apparently they expire and you can do it again. So. All
right. You get an A+. I got some work to do, but I really did enjoy your book. And that's one of the things that I'm like, Cheryl Stray did it well. Is it wasn't just about her adventure, and you really tied in, a lot of your personal stuff, the culture, and then the other thing, the thing that you were doing was so crazy that it was worth, I use that word again, crazy, but it's just so outside of my personal, what my worldview was and what I thought was possible and what people were doing. And so there was a lot to write about, there was a lot of crazy, crazy stuff that it's not like you were the 3rd or the 10th person to go do this thing. And then they're like, oh, here's my experience doing this thing. You were the first person to run across Kyrgyzstan and to write about it. And so it's it's just uncharted waters, So, yeah.
It makes it hard. Actually, everyone, you book a motivational speaker for your event. Everyone wants someone that's climbed Everest because everyone knows what that is. That's actually the better advice I could give to the listeners. The better career move is to just climb Everest. It's boring as all shit, but that's where the career is. People understand that. No one understands running solo and unsupported across Kyrgyzstan. It takes too long to say.
Yeah. So like when you go and talk to an audience first, you have to like, I mean, we're doing it on this podcast. Like, wait, you did what? Like you have to
Yeah,
like
you have to spend 5 minutes
explain.
just on slides of maps and backpack and just try to explain. It's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, luckily this is a long form podcast, so we have time
Yeah.
to explain things. And I think we have a pretty fertile audience for this type of adventure.
Yeah,
Um,
we're in our crowd here, I
yeah,
think.
we're in our
Safe
crowd.
space.
I want to, I'm really curious, like, there was just so many stories in your book about real challenges with nature, with your body, with the people that you met along the way, both positive and negative. I mean,
Yeah.
I wonder, like, I have a bunch of examples written down. What are some examples that stand out to you of being like what was the most challenging part of it? That's a big question.
I think I think the most challenging part is doubt, and that comes from everywhere. When I started it, I didn't have that much doubt. I knew it would be really hard, but I was like, ultimately, it's just running. And again, same with, my first ever adventure is like, it doesn't matter how long it takes me. Like, I'll get there when I get there, right foot, left foot, it's fine. And then when I started telling people what I was going to do, there was just this wash of doubt on everyone's face. And people that I had just met or people that were really close to me really broke my heart so many times, telling me that I was being too much of a dreamer on this one. And it was right before I went, I was actually at an adventure festival in London, and a podcaster who I will not name said to me, she was like, "Oh, what are you doing for the rest of the summer?" I said, "Oh, I'm flying to Bishkek tomorrow. I'm going to run across Kyrgyzstan." And she literally said, "You know what? Some of the best stories come out of failure." Like, those were parting words. And like, so this was kind of how I was treated when I first did it. And then of course I got to Kyrgyzstan, and it was way worse. Kyrgyzstan I love. I've obviously been there 3 times and I will keep going back. Nicest people on the planet, but they were so adamant that I would fail and I would hurt myself trying. And so everywhere you go, there's just all this doubt. And so kind of throughout the entire, 5 years of me doing this project, it was doubt from other people. And then there was a lot of moments in there in the book, in pretty raw honesty, that there was a lot of doubt that came from me about my own abilities. And, when you're feeling that fragile doubt of yourself, and then the world around you is like, you personally can't do this. Women cannot do this. Also, no one's ever done this, so no one can do this. And like, that's just all you're getting all the time is this doubt. It's really hard to make the legs work when the mind is just hearing all this no, all this doubt, all this negativity.
One of the parts of the book that really like stands out is your experience in Morocco with like the government. And I mean, you have to read the book to fully like understand what that was like. And even that probably doesn't tell the full story, but can you share like what that experience was like? Was the first time that the government, the police people like came up on you, was that when you were at the camp and you had like,
Yeah.
before long, you
Yeah, I
had
was
like
in the
a surrounded you in the middle of nowhere?
middle of actual nowhere. There wasn't even a road. And I was on night 5 of my expedition in the Atlas Mountains, and I was in my bivvy and I was so happy. I mean, if you slept under the stars, I know that you'll have a lot of Atlas race listeners. And like, I have to be really clear before I say all this. I was so nervous about that chapter because I do love Morocco and Moroccans. And, there was, for every person that made the experience really challenging, there were 5 that made it beautiful. And I do also have to just kind of aside, because this is a bikes podcast. So let's remember, I did do the Atlas Mountain Race.
Yeah.
And that was a very healing journey for me in Morocco, because then I went back with 250 cyclists, and suddenly I wasn't this lone girl that was a target of everyone. I just got to fit in, and I just got to
Yeah.
experience being in those mountains just with all my cycling friends. But anyway, so it's on night 5 of this expedition, lying in my bivvy. In the middle of the night, these 2 jeeps show up, and I look up at 10 guys. And, in hindsight, I'm so flattered they thought it would take 10 of them to take me down. But 10 men with guns just shouting at me in both Arabic and French and trying to get me into one of the vehicles. And they weren't marked vehicles, so I didn't know that they were the gendarmerie. So all I know is that I'm lying in my sleeping bag and 10 guys with guns are telling me to get in their car. And that's, every woman's worst fear about going wild camping, just realized. But it did transpire that they were the gendarmerie. They'd somehow found out what I was doing, and they just didn't like it because they felt very strongly that, again, I wouldn't succeed. Women can't do stuff. And it made them very afraid to see me doing that. And so they were very hell-bent on stopping me, not out of any animosity, but out of like paternal love, that they just didn't want me to get hurt. And so there was this huge culture clash that took course over the next couple of weeks of these guys following me and chasing me and monitoring me and never giving me a moment of privacy, and, really impacting my experience with the local Berbers. And I just, where I come from, women are allowed privacy and freedom, and they're allowed to do stuff, and you're not meant to hold people back from their dreams. And so there's this huge culture clash, and it was really, really hard. And it was a lot to untangle in my own mind, because I would sometimes be so angry at them that they were so in my way. But then I would meet them all as individuals, and each single one of them would be this lovely man who just didn't want me to get hurt. And the outcome was them very much ruining my experience, and very much getting in my way and telling me all the time that I'm gonna die, which I didn't love. But it was a lot to figure out how to handle that one as a person.
It was insane. Like, they were tracking you down in huts, and they would sleep outside and wait for you, and then they would run with you on the trail or behind you on the trail. I mean, they were stalking you. They were stalking you.
And they got really good by the end. They eventually figured out the mileages I was doing they couldn't actually handle, so they started putting down relay teams, and they'd be like recruits from the police camps. They'd be like young guys that could keep up. And it was amazing. I watched them. There was this one day, I remember it so well, because they had a really well executed relay team. Like, there was a support vehicle, and one man would run behind me for a long time until he was tired, and the next man. But like, most of them were really disorganized. I had to give one of them my water once, and I was so pissed off. It was like, don't follow me into the desert if you don't know how to run out here. Like, it was, and let's not beat around the bush. There are legitimate concerns. Like, North Africa is one of the worst places on the world to be a woman. It is a really hard place. And that was a lot of my motivation for being there was, I am a feminist and I talk all the time about women's rights, and going into a place where I daily met women who were extremely held back in their lives, where they can't even dream of the level of rights that I have. And when the police weren't around, I did have some really uncomfortable experiences with the men. And I know that women who have raced the AMR, the race director does give everyone my email address if they ever want to talk to me about that. But, things do happen. It's not easy. It's not amazing. So there were legitimate concerns, and there were legitimate moments that were quite frightening. But the monitoring, the supervision, it wasn't for me. I like the mountains because I'm an introvert. I don't like to be watched.
Yeah, I mean, nobody would like that. And being a female on top of it is just extra cautionary and scary, and it's just crazy how much you were dealing with through your trip that was outside of just running and climbing a mountain. Like, you had so many other like hurdles to tackle, and I'm wondering, like, what was like that aspect of it. The hardest part is like overcoming that, and then running was kind of just like, okay, I'm free. I can go and run and enjoy it.
Yeah, I always said that running was kind of the holiday within it, because running is the thing I'm most confident on. I've been doing it forever, and it's super easy. We can all do it. Right foot, left foot, repeat. So it was the part that I didn't really have to think about, and I always found it really weird and jarring when I got home and people go, "Oh my gosh, how far did you run?" And I would say, that one was 800 kilometers or something. And they go, "Oh my God." And they want to break that down to how many marathons it is. And I'm like, whoa, that's not interesting. It's really not interesting. It's not the hardest part. You wouldn't believe like how hard it was to find water every day. Like, I would have died if I didn't find it. And yeah, it's, and And, I said earlier that running was always a pillar of my mental health. It was, the first place I discovered to clear my head. And so it was amazing on these expeditions that can be so stressful and so scary. And there's so many things you have to manage. And if you get any of them wrong, you do genuinely maybe die. But between all that, I got to go on some amazing mountain runs on some of the best trails I've ever found.
That's a happy spin on it.
Yeah. Yeah, the book isn't all like sad and scary stuff. I think I'm happy quite a few times in it.
Yeah. But what I really liked about it was I liked how authentic you were when you're writing, and like really shared your own personal experience, both with yourself and with nature and the trail and the people you came in contact with. I think it's an honest telling. And it really like takes you for a ride, to use a pun, but like, I hope people like will read the book after this, because like the thing, like just taking Kyrgyzstan, for example, there's no emergency response, right? Like there's nobody,
not a helicopter in the whole country.
There's nobody that you can call, and you're in an unfamiliar area, just no roads, no nothing. You're running out of water. I mean, there was a long period there where you had no water, which is very, very, very triggering for me. I didn't.
Oh, no.
Cheryl Strait had a part in her book where she ran out of water. Oh, it's fine. I like, that's my biggest fear, is like running out of water. And then you have this experience where you almost die on the mountain, and you just keep going. And I mean, there's just so many examples throughout the book of course things are going to go wrong, and of course things are going to be hard. But I mean, you almost drowned in a river. You almost died on a mountain. You had all these interactions with humans that were scary and unfamiliar and unknown. And I just kept reflecting on, as I was reading the book, like, how is she still going? I would have quit. Well, maybe I know why. I think I do. Well, maybe I can't speak to you, but I can understand the desire, like the why you want to keep going. Like you want to see it, you want to do it, you want to push yourself. But I would have quit like 50 different ways by Sunday, on a lot of these things that come up, and like you just keep going. And there's never an easy leg of the trip. I mean, through the whole 6-year project, I mean, everyone is riddled with their own like challenges and challenges. And like, that's my question, is like, how did you keep going? How did you convince yourself, after you had a near-death experience on this mountain, a legitimate near-death experience? I don't think that was hyperbole for the book. Like, I think you were really...
It really was.
It was a real one. And then you just like keep going. It seemed like in the book, you're just like, okay, shake it off, do my pony. You said, like, I think you tightened your ponytail and and you were off. Like, how did you keep finding the will and the courageousness to like just keep going after, like, the guys in Morocco that were following you? I mean, it was just such a drag, but you just endured it. You endured it. How the heck?
I think I put myself in the position that I had to. One, there's like, you want to quit, fine. How are you going to get out? Like when I had that near-death problem in Kyrgyzstan, I figured I was 2 or 3 days of steady running to the next paved road where I could thumb a ride to get, about 12, 15-hour bus ride back to Bishkek to get a flight home. Like that was what I was looking at for quitting. So it's not like an easy job. And I think I had said I was going to quit, but by the time that those couple days of running to get anywhere out of that spot were over, I'd been running all that time and I was happy again and everything was fine. And so I really put myself in that position, and also don't take it for granted that I got to do these things. Morocco was really stressful, but at the time I was really busy with work, and I had carved out an entire month of my life and my fitness and everything to spend a whole month in Morocco. And I thought, if I fail, I don't know when the next time is that I'm going to be able to take off a month and fly to Morocco. And same with Bolivia. I had HAPE, which is, when your lungs are we basically are drowning from the inside because of altitude sickness. So it would have been a good idea to quit. But I was really, you're there and there are glaciers right in front of you, reminding you that you flying here did come at a cost. And I was like, gosh, if I fail, I can't face flying across the world again just because I failed and I have to keep on trying. It's not fair. And so I really, I really put myself in a position that all of them had to be successful. And, I think and I really wanted it. And I know that there were these really scary, horrible moments, but in between all of it, I was so comfortable and I was so content and I was doing the thing that I really loved doing. And I knew that I belonged where I was, as awful and stressful as things could get. At the same time, I felt like the best version of myself. I didn't want to quit and go home because I was like, this is where I should be right now. This is what I like to do.
Yeah. You don't want to go home and get those post-adventure blues.
No, exactly.
That's all that's waiting for you at home.
On the couch, drinking your wine. That's not what I want. I want to be out here in my bivy sack, shivering.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Let's see, another quote from you. I have so many notes. I wonder if, with anything hard, always know your why. That was actually from your Substack that you wrote.
Hey, did I write that last week?
You did. You just wrote that. You're so good you don't even know it. You're banging out the one-liners. And amazing. Obviously, like, to get through all this stuff, you had your own why. Do you know what that why was?
I think it would evolve and there'd be like micro whys of what I wanted. I think I really wanted to know if I could. I really wanted to know what I was made of. I carry around the name Tough. People ask me all the time. So PSA, Tough is my real name. It's pronounced Tooth in Scotland, but yeah, my name is Tough. And you carry that around as this badge, and everyone that you meet is like, well, are you really tough? I need to know, am I really tough? I had to find out. Yeah.
I was recording a segment for the podcast, like a patron episode, and I said this, like, in the last like year and a half, I've lost 25 pounds. I've just been through, like, changed my relationship with alcohol, get off SSRIs. Like, I've just been through this huge shift and transformation. And now I'm signed up for and they're not all ultras, by the way. I'm doing Mid-South and then Ozark Despair and then AZT 300. And so, but that's what I was saying to my audience is like, yeah, it's like, okay, now I want to find out where I'm at, like, and the only way to really test yourself and find out where you're at and who you are is to put yourself in some pretty put yourself in a situation that's like where you have to rely on yourself. There's no not another option. Now, I mean, obviously, like, I could call somebody, like, you were in Kyrgyzstan where, like, there's literally no other option, and all these other places where you're like, okay, well, I'm actually just out in here and I have to rely on myself. But yeah, like, that's the thing is, like, there's that question for a certain type of people. It's like, you want to find out who you are, and this is one way to do it. And you're alone with your thoughts. You have to rely on yourself, and then when you rely on yourself, you have to step up to the plate, and then you step up to the plate and you're like, oh, I did that. Now I can trust myself a little bit more. And it's like through that process that we grow, I guess. It's really...
Exactly. I've always talked about your comfort zone being a fluid line, that, what you're comfortable with right now, where your comfort zone is, that's not fixed. You can meet the edge of that. And every time that you meet the edge of it, you push it back. And then, you push it back and back and back over all these things that you do in your life. And then more of the world is available to you because you've got this really expanded comfort zone. You're just, like you say, you trust yourself more. And that's such a good thing. And you carry that in your life. That's not just a cycling thing that is just in this one niche world. Like, that's about who you are and the type of relationships you get into and what you do with your work and your creativity. Like, it carries through your whole life. So yeah, I think it's really valuable for people to test themselves this way and find out what they're made of.
Yeah, I love that. I talk about that, about how, yeah, you kind of like, you learn to trust yourself or rely on yourself, and you realize how capable you are. And then you can take that and apply that to any and every area of your life. Like, it's not just like, oh, I only go and ride a long distance and fix my bike, but it's like, well, fuck, if I can do that, I mean, if I could
Yeah.
do that, if I can run across Kyrgyzstan, like, what else can I do? And
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah, like you said, it kind of unlocks more of the world. Um, yeah. And then you can do anything you want. You can
Yeah.
fly if you want to.
You try first. Tell me how it goes.
Smart, smart. All right. Well, I wonder how much of my cycling audience is still sticking around. Let's
Yeah. We'll talk about bikes.
we can talk about bikes. We can talk about bikes for a little bit. Because the crazy thing is like, while you're doing this huge running project, you're also competing in bike packing ultra races and winning bike packing ultra races. So like, I might have missed some, but I know in 2018 you won Silk Road mountain bike race. In 2020 you won Atlas mountain race. And then in 2021, you won Silk Road mountain race. And so like, while you were, you'd go ride Kyrgyzstan, and then you would go back 2 years later or so, and then you would run, and then you would go back and ride it. And so you were getting this, not only are you doing like these crazy, I keep saying crazy, but these like really big expedition runs. And at the same time, you're competing in ultra bikepacking and doing quite well. And so I guess like, so you went on your bike tour, but like, when did you get interested in bike pack racing, and when did that come into the confluence of your ultra endurance life?
Yeah, I'm not sure where it first came up, but I moved to Scotland, and this is when Mike Hall was alive and really promoting the TCR, and so kind of everyone that was into bike packing was also very interested in anything that Mike Hall was making, and I think that's where I kind of came across my desk, that this activity that I love. I would go on a bike tour every summer, and I go, oh, I really love that, but what would it be like to do it spicy, make it hard. And then, Mike Hall, he was really great at trying to bring people into the sport. And I think that was something that he really set the tone for. Like, that was, I think, a big part of his legacy in our community, is that he really set an example, even though he was very elite, like a very fast bike packer that none of us could imagine. He was very big on just inviting everyone into the sport, and he was very passionate about how there weren't enough women, and we should just invite all the women and let them come up ride bikes with us. And so I think it was kind of through his work, even though I didn't know him personally, but just kind of like in the bike packing sphere of the UK, it was a really embracing community. And cycling doesn't have a lot of that. I don't know if you've noticed about cycling, but they're a little bit snobby in some arenas. But bikepacking, yeah, didn't have that, and the races didn't. And so I think I just fell into a bad crowd. I think I just met people that liked ultra cycling, and I thought, well, I'll do that. So I think I did the, let's see, I started a TCR, I did not finish. And then I did the Transatlantic Way, and I came second, and I couldn't believe it. Like, I really couldn't believe it that I had finished one and done really well. And then I think that summer I went off and did the Silk Road, and again, really couldn't believe that I had won. Like, I mean, it was just so beyond what I thought I was capable of. But I loved Kyrgyzstan, and I felt confident being out in those mountains, even though I knew I was one of the worst cyclists objectively in the race. I was like, well, I've got all the other skills, and I'll just have to rock those, and it worked out.
Yeah. So that was one of my questions, is like, how much does did your experience as like do you classify yourself as an ultra runner?
Yeah.
Or you're like an ultra
Yeah,
runner?
I think I run pretty far. I think it's all right.
Yeah. I think ultra might be a little limiting in the context. Like, ultra running, I thought was like 100 or 200 miles. And now you're like the extra ultra. But how did that help you at Silk Road or just entering into bike pack racing?
So I think that old mindset thing being really important. If you do a solo expedition, the way that you have to master what goes on in your own mind to keep it moving, it's pretty intense. And then you come to ultra racing, and then for me, it's like a party because now I'm not doing it alone. There's hundreds of other riders out there, and you get to chat to them. And I never had that advantage on my solo expeditions. I was out there in the wilderness thinking I might be crazy and trying to move myself forward. And then you enter a race, and yeah, there's more than 100 other people that are just as crazy as you that want to do this stuff, and you get to hang out with them and ride with them. And so I did have the mental side. I think I don't want to say it was easy because none of it is easy, but I think I had that kind of like locked down. I felt really good about that side. And then in races like the Silk Road, where your wilderness survival skills and your mountain skills play a really big role. You can't just be a good cyclist and get away with it. You have to be able to be okay out there. You're at altitude and you got the storms, and it's a difficult country to understand if you've never been to Central Asia. And I had all that stuff really knocked down. So yeah, I think if anyone did an analysis of the race, they would put me as my segments as some of the slowest ones. I didn't mountain bike at the time. This is like, I can't believe that Nelson let me enter the race. I did not mountain bike at the time. I didn't even bring a mountain bike. I went on a gravel bike. I was just like, what? I didn't know how to mountain bike. I've since learned, but I didn't have any cycling skills to rely on to get me around that course.
Yeah, that is so wild. And it's crazy that you won it. How surprised were that you won it? I mean, you didn't know how to mountain bike. You're a cyclist, but it's not like your main gig. And then you walk away with a W.
For other people. Like I got to I think I found out maybe less than halfway around. I found that I'd been in second place the whole time, like since the start. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I wonder if everyone else is okay. Like something must have happened. This can't be right. Yeah. And then by the time I got to checkpoint 2, I went into first place. And like, it was really weird because I've never been in that experience before. I've never been a good athlete. I don't come from an athletic background where I'm like used to winning sports competitions. It's not a role I've ever been in before. So I think I just spent a lot of time going, me? Like dowdy little me? I'm in first place in this silly, silly bike race. And I just couldn't believe it. And then I was really excited about the prospect of what that could mean for one, my own confidence, but then also, I'm pretty clear that I do these things for the women, for the girls, to encourage more of us to do it. And
what does your tattoo say? You go, girl?
You go, girl. Yeah, it's on the back of my arm here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, girl is open on that tattoo. It's for everyone.
Yeah.
I just like that phrase. Yeah. So I think knowing that I could win when I kind of realized that I was very much in line to take it. I got really excited, but then also had this real pressure of, I'm got to do this for the women out there. I got to get something on the scoreboard. Like suddenly I hadn't been racing until that point. And then I was like, oh, I think I better try and figure out how to ride this bike a little bit faster, make sure I get there.
Yeah. So what happened? I mean, that spurred something in you to live up to these new expectations that you found yourself in kind of on accident or what happened after that?
I think at that point I'd done 2 on-foot expeditions. I'd done Kyrgyzstan and Morocco, and those were world's first. And then I won the Silk Road, and then I immediately went to Bolivia and got another world's first expedition. So very quickly, my career in the outdoor industry kind of came together. And, suddenly I was representing brands as an athlete and got to speak at festivals and got to write for magazines that I used to buy and geek out over. And so suddenly I had this career that I wouldn't say suddenly because I think I worked pretty hard to get it. Like,
yeah, sounded like it started at 18 in Venezuela.
Yeah.
You've just been.
So suddenly I'm in this career. And again, it was like, you got to make that meaningful. I don't want to stand up and just tell people that I had a really nice time in Kyrgyzstan and that's the end. It's really important to make that meaningful for other people. And I think something that's always stuck with me is that it took me a long time to put myself forward and try to win a race because I never believed that people like me could. I was a chubby teenage girl from Alberta, and I was always told that, this stuff wasn't for me. I tried to run across Kyrgyzstan. Everyone's like, "Oh, you can't do that." But I did. And then I went and I won that race across Kyrgyzstan. And no one believed that. I mean, people at the finish line literally said to me, "I can't believe you did that." Like, to my face. People always have doubted me. And so I think I have made a lot of what I do about, there are 16-year-old girls out there right now who are exactly the way that I was. And they might love the outdoors, but they might not think that they belong here. They might love bikes, but they think they'll be laughed out of the place because, they don't have the right body type or whatever it is. And so I try to make what I do worthwhile for them, to make sure that everyone knows that, you do belong here and that you should do this stuff. And it's really exciting and it's really hard, but you'll grow so much. And yeah, that's kind of been my focus ever since. I've gone on a real tangent here. Am I doing all right,
No,
Patrick?
no, you're doing great. I love this. I'm a dad of two daughters, and I have a 15-year-old daughter. So when you talk about a 16-year-old girl, like I'm in that period of life where I'm raising a young lady right now. And, I want her to know that the world is hers, whatever she wants it to be. And going back to academics, like I'm like, if you want to be a tattoo artist, great. Like if you want, you want to pursue art or whatever you want to do, like try it out, don't just limit your mind, like whatever it is in life. And like, I was after I read your book, I told myself that I want my daughter to read your book, like
Oh, that means so much to me. Oh,
it's important, that you said in your book, like the men and women are essentially living the same life, but in different experiences of the same life. And it's true. And your book is a really good example of the additional challenges that, even like well-meaning people, like dudes would be like, one guy was like, "Are you out here by yourself?" And you said back to him, you're like, "Are you out here by yourself?" Like it's just so, it's so patronizing, and then there's like real threats, and it's something that as a father of two girls that I want them to realize that they can do whatever they want. And I wonder if you find that, like, it seems to me, and it's something that I really like about endurance sports, is like I said earlier, it's like an equalizer where you see men and women competing more equally. And that's something that I personally love about it, because it's not just about how tough or strong you are. Like you have to go into your entire arsenal of toolkit to be successfl. And it really shows that we're all very capable humans,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that ultra endurance sports have the potential to be the most gender neutral place. And I don't think that, I think we should be very gender inclusive. I think, we shouldn't need those labels. I think we still do in some places, but, that comment about that guy who said, "Oh my God, you're alone." He was alone. I was DMing Mel Webb the other night, and she's just come back from the Atlas. And we were just ranting about the number of times in these races when guys that we're racing with will say, "Oh my God, you're so strong." And they're so congratulated. And you look at them and you go, "You're tied with me in this bike race for you to be saying that to me right now. Am I meant to say it back?" And I know that they mean it really well. And the guy said it to me last week in Rwanda. And I looked at him and I was like, I'm riding the same pace as you. I just want to say, guys, stop being surprised to see us. It's really nice. It's really, really lovely when guys are so welcoming and they're so congratulating and they're so encouraging the way they are. I really love our community. I think the guys are always really, really kind to us, but stop being fucking surprised that we're there.
Yeah. Yeah. Stop being surprised, you dumbasses.
Yeah. And then don't tell me that I'm running the wrong gear ratio. I don't care. Just stop talking about
And
it.
stop mansplaining too.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, it's really interesting, being a podcast host, just a little tangent here, but one thing that it's just my own personal study, but there's been so many women who I've asked to like come on the podcast that the answers are always the same or similar. It's like, oh, I'm not qualified. There's somebody better that could speak to this. Like, you know, I don't feel confident, you know, and that's fine. Like I'm not throwing shade, but like on the inverse, on the other side of the table, men are beating down my fucking door to come on the podcast. And like men just are like, have this like, we fucking know everything and we're going to tell you about it thing. And there's a
distinction. No one wants to hear from them. They're really happy to do it. And I do think it's a big factor in why we don't see as many women at the races. Cause you know, I speak to these women all the time. I try really hard to respond to every woman who DMs me or emails me about entering the races. And they always say things to me like, I'd really love to do the Silk Road. I'm thinking 2026 is the year. And I'm like, girl, just go. Like, you're never going to be ready. And this is why apparently also the scratch rate between men and women are far less likely to scratch out of races. And I think it's because they hold themselves back for years until they finally let themselves believe that they can do it. So they fucking can when they finally do. Whereas the guys are a lot more willing to say, like, let's find out. Let's fuck around and let's find out. Yeah. And just sign up, which is great. And we need more of that energy. And we need, women, stop holding yourselves back. Like, we gotta get our voices out there.
Yeah, I love that. And you're definitely championing that, which I think is huge. And I hope through my platform, I do a decent job of showcasing everybody who's doing amazing things. And I would say
it stands out as a cycling podcast in that there are frequent female guests. So kudos to you. It's not a lot.
I want there to be more of them. So women, here's my call to women. If I holler at you for an episode, step up, man. Like,
say yes.
The thing about it is like, everybody's experience is relatable to so many people, you know, like we're always and I'm this way, we all are, but we're kind of like sheltered and we're like, oh, I don't know if, you know, this is good enough or whatever. But like, we're just people connecting to other people, and everybody understands like whether we can connect to like a direct, like exactly the experience you're going through, maybe not, but we understand what challenges are. We understand what like the human and life experience is. And so I feel like everybody's story is relatable. And the more voices we add to that, like let me finish my thought. The more voices we add to that, like the better we all are and the more we can like progress together. And I'm speaking to myself because like one of the reasons I host a podcast is because like one of my struggles in life has been like anxiety, not like anxiety, really bad anxiety that's been like life altering and paralyzing and you know, just hard. And through podcast and like long form conversations and just listening to other people who are also imperfect and who also have their own struggles and their own challenges is one of the things that's like genuinely helped me to be more like vocal and be more like okay with just being me, because I'm like, oh, there's other people that are also, you know, going through hard things. And so like, yeah, I think everybody's experience is just so valuable. And I'm going on a tangent now.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You're on such a good tangent. Don't stop.
I'm okay. I won't stop. I also like, that was my message to the women. Like I think everybody's experience is valuable. And one of my goals for the platform is to showcase women. I was raised by a very strong mother, like just a force of nature. And I'm raising two daughters and like, I'm pro women, like 100%, you know,
good man.
But there's a difference between like the genders, and I think it's so important when women like stand up and they're vocal and they are a representation matters, right? It's like, oh, okay, I can do that too, right? The same way I look at podcasts, I'm like, oh, other people are weird and they've got their issues and it makes me feel better about being me. Like we all kind of relate and kind of go through like other people's experiences. The thing about your book is like, this is my next point, is like your book has a narrative of like sharing the female experience through, you know, what you did. And I think, like I said, I want my daughter to read it. I want to share that book with her and have her read it. But the other thing I wanted to say is I want men to read your book. Like I want men, I think men could probably have the most to learn and to grow from like that experience of like what it's like to be a woman. And like that would help internalize and like expand on your topic of men. Don't be so surprised when you see us out there. Just be like, hey, how's it going? You know, nice to meet you. Where are you
Yeah.
from? I actually don't ask you where you're from. I know you don't like that question because you
No, it's such
grew
a,
up
I
in.
do find it such a shame that women's writing in the adventure sphere get put under the genre of women's writing, not adventure writing. And so men will typically not read or find my book. And I've had so many men like at races or at events say, "Oh, my wife loved your book." And I'm always like, "Oh, did you not think you would relate to it?" Just like I only mentioned my period once, you guys. Like it's not that bad. Like
Yeah.
really, it's a book that men could, I swear they could read it if they want to. But yeah, at least, yeah, they say my wife loved your book, and I go, ha, I'm in your house. I'm in there.
I'll champion that and echo. I strongly, I think, I
Not just
mean,
my book, sorry. I'm not a narcissist, not just my book. I mean, just read a woman's book.
yeah,
A woman's
fair
book.
enough.
Open your
But
mind, guys.
it is your podcast,
It
so
could
it's
be
okay
mine,
to,
but it could be another woman. Any woman,
yeah,
read her book.
read Cheryl Strayed's book. But
Rachel Strayed, she's a much better writer. Start there.
it is a good progression. I won't say start there because it's better, but like it is a good like entryway. It's like a starting point for, and then like your story kind of is the ultra version of like what she did. But oh shit, what was I gonna say? Oh, just to like, yeah, your adventure is relatable to everybody, gender aside. Like as a man, I don't know why that fucking matters, but like I'm like, holy shit, she's doing hard things. Doesn't matter what her gender is. Like
Yeah, I hope
that's
so.
fucking gnarly. But also like the other part of that is it was informative. Maybe yeah. It did inform me to a larger degree of some of the additional challenges that women face. I think Cheryl Strayed. Do you remember the one in her book where like the two hunters came in up to her when she was like in the middle of the woods, and they were
Yeah.
really speaking inappropriate, like just like hitting on her, and like it's just two dudes in the middle of the woods, no one around. And in the book, she says that she hiked as far as she could, like getting away from these guys. Like once they kind of like separated, she like packed up camp and just hiked and hiked and hiked and hiked and hiked. And she said, I hiked until I couldn't hike anymore. And then I ran. And like those words, like, I think that's important for a man to hear is like, if you come up to I mean, just, I don't know, there's a million different examples, but like, don't be a weird, creepy dude in the middle of the woods.
Oh, we
and
would
like,
so appreciate it if the weird, creepy dudes could just keep that to themselves from now on.
yeah,
We'd really
yeah,
love
for
that.
sure. Yeah. But like, yeah, I think your book is a good way to like educate men and help see a different perspective of like how patronizing it can be to just be like, oh, you're out on the trail. Like just, it's like everything. It's like all these interactions from like real
Yeah.
threats
And once
of guys.
they come from a really good place. Like that guy was
Right.
trying to give me a compliment. And I hate that I've publicly shamed him because he gave me the wrong compliment. But like, yeah, it's like, think it through. I'm not a baby. I'm a grown ass person. And
Well,
yeah, we get treated like we're just so incapable. It's just so unlikely to meet one of us.
yeah. No, I think it's a completely fair point, and you didn't mention the guy by name, and so, but that was only representative of like a larger, like that was one example of probably like thousands of examples that were exactly.
Daily, I could just go for a run locally, and someone might say, "You go, girl," or something. I'm like, all right. Like,
yeah. I mean, what would it be like to me if I was on a trail and like some dude like, oh, you're out here by yourself? I mean, it would like, it's unfathomable that someone would ask me that question. So why is it so okay? And it's not okay, but why does it seem to be okay to be like, what are you doing out here? Are you safe? Where's your boyfriend or your husband or your dog to keep you safe? And do you know how far away that is? And do you know that there's a mountain? Like you're incapable of like understanding your own existence and time.
Like I have experience to rely on that I can brush those guys off because I know that I'm fine. I know that I belong here and I know that I can do this because I've done it enough. But actually, for a woman on her first time adventure, the first time she books a ticket to leave her country, and people say, "Oh my God," you get these comments, and it really gets in your head, and it's impossible to communicate how much we internalize the doubts that we get from those around us. Because if your whole life people treat you like you should do a shorter course of the races, and you should never camp alone, and you should do this, and you should follow all these rules because you're just a little delicate girl, you internalize so much of that, and then you start holding yourself back, and then you start holding other women back because you talk about like that in front of them, and it becomes this whole thing where we believe that women are delicate and that they don't get to do these things. And you know what? Yeah, we are going to get hurt. You're going to go outside and you're going to get hurt, and then you're going to pick yourself up and you're going to tighten your ponytail, and you're going to be okay, and you're going to learn, and you're going to grow. And you know what? We should celebrate that, and we should encourage that. Like, it's not all roses. Of course you're going to get hurt, but it's part of the growth.
I love that. So I was going to ask you, like, what would be your advice to other women? And I feel like, I don't know, I'll ask you that question, but I feel like you kind of answered it. Like, just go. You're going to get hurt. It's going to be hard. Tighten your ponytail and keep going.
Yeah. And back yourself then would be my advice. Especially for the younger women, because you're going to get the most comments out of everyone. But, I'm 35 and I'm still getting those damn comments. So just back yourself. Just be ready that everywhere you go, people are going to say, "Oh my God, are you alone? Are you okay getting up the stairs?" Like, people are going to say things to you, and you just need to steady yourself and say, "I'm good. I'm backing myself. I can be my own cheerleader." Just, believe in yourself, trust yourself. I trust you. I believe in you. You can say it in my accent if it helps you. But yeah, just back yourself when you go out into the world, because you're gonna hear the doubt. It's a real shitty thing, but you're gonna hear it. So just be ready to brush it off.
Yeah. I think that is great advice. That's the first time I've got that advice on the podcast. So I think that's gold right there. And you not only are offering that advice, but you're an example of it. Like you're doing that. Like in your book, there's so many times where you I felt exhausted just reading your book. I mean, really, I'm just
that's a bad review.
No, but no, I was like there. No, it's a good review. I was there with you. Like I felt exhausted by all of the people that were like, you know how far that is. No, you can't do that. It's going to take you long. But the part of that like I wanted to touch on is like, you were your own advocate through the whole thing. You're like, nope, I'm good. I know what I'm doing. I'm faster than you think. How the fuck do you think I got here? I've been doing this for 500 kilometers or whatever. And like when those guys were surrounding you and you were in your tent and they were trying to get you to go, you said in your book, you didn't even stand up. You just like stayed in your sleeping bag. You were like protesting. You're like, I am not going anywhere. I am staying right here. And it's exhausting. Like I feel it sucks, right? Like that's what we need to get over is all of that bullshit so that you can just go and run or ride your bike and not have to deal with the exhaustiveness of just this continual dialogue that's just like always there,
Yeah, it's so true. It's exhausting. It's a whole other thing that we just have to carry with us when we do stuff, and it would be amazing if we could stop. It'd be amazing if we could just end the patriarchy.
Well, you're moving the needle forward, so and hopefully this podcast moves it a little bit more.
Hell yeah!
All right, man, we are chatty. This is good stuff. Let's I want to ask you a question. Okay. How are you doing on time, by the way?
Yeah, I'm fine because it's evening here. So
we'll wrap it up here pretty soon. I have lived I've been saying this for a while that ultra endurance self-supported bike pack racing is the hardest endurance sport on the planet. And then I read your book. And I'm like, oh shit, I really didn't know that this was a thing. I'd never heard of this before. And so I'd like to get your opinion as a person who, because the cool thing is, again, you ran in Kyrgyzstan, and then you rode your bike in Kyrgyzstan. I think you ran in Atlas in Morocco before you rode your bike in Morocco. So you have like, you can really kind of compare notes, and obviously they're kind of different things, but like, what's harder? I am super curious.
Ooh.
Like what is the harder endurance sport?
Ooh, that's really difficult. That's a difficult
You're the only
question.
one that in the world that can answer this
Yeah,
question,
I've
I
done the
think.
research. Yeah, you know what? They're both hard in really unique ways. Like what sucks about one is great about the other kind of thing. And I think that's why I do both. So, cycling so much faster. And that means that you don't run out of water because you'll get to the next river way faster and the next resupply. So that makes it really nice. But then suddenly your fucking bike breaks and you're dealing with the mechanical. And then you really wish that you were running again where you have that freedom. So they are completely different. If I have to give you an answer, I would say running can be obviously a lot harder on your body. I think that's why a lot of people cycle, is because they hurt
Yeah.
their bodies running. But then running has just that simplicity that you're not held back by these wheels that need to find ground to roll on. So again, it's just totally different. They're hard in completely different ways. And I'm really grateful that I do both, and I'm going to keep doing both because, I do one and it makes me miss the other, and vice versa. Um, Different, some places are better with one than the other. I really liked riding my bike in the Atlas Mountains, again, with the water thing. Like, there are some
Mm.
parts of my run where I had to go 50 kilometers without getting any water. That's
No,
hard
man.
when you're running. That's too far. But on your bike,
No.
you don't think about it. Just put a couple bottle cages in and off you go. So, that one was easier.
I c-
Kyrgyzstan, I'm back and forth on which was easier.
Oh, really? It's
Uh,
kind of a toss up?
yeah, kind of a toss up. Yeah, because once I went back last time I went to the Silk Road, I actually was a mountain biker by then. I rode a mountain bike, and then I was like, oh, this is actually quite nice to be able to mountain bike over Kyrgyzstan. Turns out it's a lot easier. Um,
Yeah.
so that made it nice, but then there's obviously a lot of time that you spend underneath your bike carrying it up something, and that'd be easier without it. So yeah, I don't know. That's a really hard question.
Okay. So they're both tough. Because in
They're
my
both tough.
mind, like I really thought once I read your book, I was like, oh, this is way harder. And this is speaking obviously as a person who doesn't self-proclaim like not a runner,
Yeah.
but it does seem, yeah, there's no coasting.
No, yeah, that's
There's
hard.
way longer between resupply points,
Yeah.
and you're not on a freaking road or a trail. Like it's not a designated thing where you're like, oh, people go here. It's just
Yeah,
pick
okay,
a
I guess it
line on a
depends on your
mountain.
skill set. Yeah, because I was really comfortable with those bits. And yeah, the being out in the wilderness for 5 days without a resupply, I think I was just kind of like, yeah, I think I was okay with that. But yeah, that's gonna intimidate you, then yeah, running is gonna be harder because yeah, the
Yeah.
distances take so much longer.
Well, you're right. I think it speaks to your point earlier about, the more you do, I'm butchering this paraphrase, but essentially like the more you do, the more you grow and the more
Yeah.
capable you are and your comfort zone expands. And so your comfort zone is just expanded to where, doing those 5 days without resupply is within a comfort zone. Alex
Yeah.
Honnold climbing El Capitan without a rope, he says is within his comfort zone. That's
Exactly.
mind
Yeah.
blowing
You
to
didn't think of
people.
the
But
risk.
yeah, I've listened to quite a few podcasts with him, and he's a fascinating person. But it just speaks to like, I think that, yeah, that's a good way to tie a bow on that, is like, what is ultimately going to determine how difficult something is will speak directly to your comfortability and your experience with that thing. So, for me, running across Kyrgyzstan is going to be 100 times harder than riding my bike across it.
Yeah.
But if you're a runner coming to cycling, it might be like, oh, there's no way. I mean, I don't even know how to fix a flat. I don't know what PSI I should be at. Like, I don't know about
Yeah.
gears, so I think you got a good answer.
Okay, good.
What about another thing I've always been interested about? I feel like cycling is a little bit safer in that you're moving through the world at a different speed than everybody else. So like if you're running, I guess you're like a little bit faster than them, but you're kind of like in the mix of like pedestrian traffic, and you're like
Yeah.
more, there's not this like object that's kind of like separating me from you. Like you're going slower than cars, but faster than people. And so you can kind of just like float through space and time, and it feels like it kind of insulates you. So I was wondering if you could like speak to, does cycling feel safer to you than running?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I've never spoken to anyone about that, but you've put it really well. I do feel like, I do feel more vulnerable without my bike. Yeah, the bike, yeah, it's this big metal thing that's carrying all your stuff, and like you can sprint away on it a lot faster. And yeah, and it feels like a companion at times as well, doesn't it? So yeah, I do feel a little bit more confident with my bike usually. Um, yeah, yeah, I think you've nailed it. That
Okay.
you're
Yeah,
just
I'm not
more
a runner,
vulnerable.
but when I was reading your book, that was one of the thing that like stood out to me as well. All right. Bikepacking racing career. You just, and now you wrote a really good piece on your Substack about your last, it's been what, 2.5 years since you've done an ultra.
Yeah, a long time.
And yeah, so you wrote a big piece, or not a big piece, but you wrote a piece for your Substack, talking about why you've been away from the sport. That's really good. Where do you think you go now? Like, are you getting back into, well, what? I mean, you just did race around Rwanda. You finished it in third place. And I know that like you just wanted to finish, like you weren't
Yeah.
necessarily gunning for like the top prize or the hat. Don't you get a hat if you
No,
come in
that's
first on that?
Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan's
Oh,
a
that's
hat.
Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah.
You don't get a hat for race around Rwanda. What do you get if you
I
win
don't know. I
race
didn't
around?
win. I have no idea.
You get nothing for third. That's
Nothing.
on par or far for bikepacking racing.
Yeah.
But what's next for you? Like where do you think you go from here in your athletic career?
Yeah, so I'm going to race quite a lot this year, both on foot and on bike. And a lot of that is through the soul searching that I did over that 2.5 years of recovery, finding out that I do love this sport and I don't want to lose it. And the thing that I love the most about it is the community. And that comes from going to these events. And, I'd love to do some more events that aren't super competitive. And I'm going to do a few rallies this year as well. But yeah, most of our events are races. And so I'll beat a lot of them this year. And a lot of my goals in them will be to have an amazing time. I'm sure I'll try to compete a couple of times. But for the most part, I want to be back. I want to be back in the mix. I miss the weird, crazy bikepacking people. So literally in packing mayhem right now because I'm flying to Sweden Thursday. So in 2 days to do a fat biking race. I've never done fat biking, but I'm going to do an Arctic race. And then
Yikes.
I think I'm straight into a foot race and then the Highland Trail in Scotland, which passes near my front door. So I've kind of got no good reason not to do it.
Oh, you're doing the HT 550, Highland
I
Trail
am.
550. Oh, that's
Yeah.
exciting. That's one that's on
Yeah.
my bucket list. It just looks like an idyllic place to go ride.
Yeah,
And
I
hard.
think
I
if you
know
look
it's
at the
hard
pictures
too.
and you've never been to Scotland, you can think that you don't know
Yeah.
about our headwinds and our midges. But yeah, yeah,
I've
like
heard
I said,
about the
it's in my
midges.
neighborhood. I can literally like get a lift to the start line in a couple of hours and don't have to fly anywhere, which is really nice.
Are you planning any more books? Do you think you might write a book about bikepacking?
Maybe I haven't spoken to my publisher about pitching anything. Yeah, maybe. It's funny writing a book takes a lot out of you. Well, it took a lot out of me. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, once you write it, the shit thing is then you got to promote it. Like you think you're done and you send in your manuscript and you're like, I did it. No, you've not done it. Now you have to promote it. Now you have to speak to people and on stages and beg people to give you 5-star Amazon reviews or else no one will buy it. Never get another book deal again. That was a plug. Please review my book if you've read it. Only
Oh
if you
my
liked it.
gosh.
Only 5 stars.
Yeah.
So I
Only
think
rate it if you like it.
Yeah, please only write if you like it. If you didn't like it, still no refunds. That's my policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will write another book one day. I'm not working on one at the moment. How's that?
What determines if and when you write a book? Like, do you just feel like, okay, I have something worth saying? Like, what motivates you or prompts you to actually sit down and go through that entire process of writing a book, editing it, and then freaking promoting it like it's a whole nother job? Like, what is the mechanism that kind of spurs that?
I got very hounded by a publisher. So the girl thing of us saying no, like we're not qualified. When a publisher first approached me, I said, "Thank you so much. That's so kind. But I'm too young. I'm not ready to write a book. I haven't got anything interesting to say." And she just kind of called me back every 3 months to say, "Are you ready yet? Are you ready yet?" And then during lockdown 2020, she got me. I had nothing better to do. And I started thinking about it again. And she called me up and she was like, "Come on, write the book." And so she gave me a nice book deal. And so that was what encouraged me was one woman calling me up all the time, telling me that I could write a book. And yeah, and it turned out I did have a lot to say because I had this 5-year project that I tried to cram into 80,000 words.
How do you feel about the book? I know you haven't read it again, but
Yeah.
yeah, how do you feel about? I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. How do you feel about the book and the response that you've got, and the fact that it's like out there in the world now?
Good question. It's not something I actually think about. I'm very proud of myself that I did it, and that's a very hard thing for me to say that I'm proud of myself. But
Good.
it's not just how long it took me to write the book. It's that whole project, and there are parts of that book where I really bare my soul, and I'm glad that I'm in a place in my life that I'm totally comfortable doing that. And I'm really happy to tell people the whole very raw truth about things. And I love that about myself. So yeah, I'm proud of it being done. I'm grateful beyond belief that I had that opportunity, that I had a publisher that wanted to make that happen for me. Because obviously I wrote it, but then other people had to go edit it and design covers and sell it and translate it into other languages. All these things, like you're just one small part of it. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that, and that people actually read it, and that people come and tell me that they liked it. I get really awkward when people say that to me, but it's a really lovely thing to work so hard on something and have people actually read it and appreciate it.
Yeah, I feel like I can relate to you. I've had to work on it because I am the most awkward person you'll ever meet. If you come up and you're like, "Oh, I listen to your podcast. It's so great." And I'm like, no, stop.
We're all introverts in this industry. It's ridiculous to have to make us go out in public. We're not prepared.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're like, by and large, you're right. Mostly all introverts. And so,
Yeah.
I just sit in my house and I send out episodes into the universe, and I just like hang out in my home, and I'm completely insulated from it unless
Yeah.
I go to like a bike race or something, and then I meet people and it's like scary. And you're like, "Oh, wow, people are," but it's really cool, and it's something I've had to, fight against, like that imposter syndrome, and just like, okay, I did this. This is a real thing, and just accept it. And I can definitely relate to that part of it. But
Yeah, I bet.
I'll add and make it awkward and say that I really appreciated your book. You're a huge inspiration to me and to people all around the world. But I was like legitimately nervous to do this episode, and I don't always
No.
oh man, I couldn't sleep last night. I was just like, I would pull up my notes and I would
Totally
like
very quickly
rewrite.
realize there's just no need. It's really cool.
I mean, yeah, it's just a lesson I always have to keep telling myself. Like, but
Yeah.
it's a balance of I need to put in the work so it goes well, but like
Yeah.
I don't like being stressed out and nervous isn't gonna be productive in any way. And so, Yeah, but I really, and the other thing is like when you read a book, like you feel like you know somebody to a
Yeah.
degree, like you know a version of them. And I was thinking about it as I was like reading and preparing for this episode, like, because people write to me and talk to me in a way of familiarity.
Oh,
And I'm like, wait, what's your entry point here? What have you read? What do you know? And I'm
yeah.
like, it's a whole level of awkwardness that I'm still learning how
Yeah,
to
it really is.
manage.
Yeah, we're good that we're on the same page, though. At least, like, I listen to your podcast because, yeah, I get the same thing that people come up to me and they dive right in with one of my big life issues or something, and and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what's your name? And they know you so well, and they're like, let's go running together. I think we should. And I'm like, who are you? It's really
Yeah.
nice, but yeah, you got to slow down and give me a chance because I'm not, if you've not written a book, then I don't know.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's unfair. When I started dating Natalie, I told her it's unfair. Like you need to write a
Yeah.
book, you need to produce a podcast or something because
You
you've
have
got
to
a
go
lot
get
of
to know her. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I had to do the work. Like what the
Traditional
heck?
way.
Well, Jenny Tuff, it's been an absolute pleasure. I covered about 10% of my notes, but hopefully you'll come back on the podcast again one day and we can keep
after you've done
talking.
the editing and you think, yeah, I would love it if you would invite me back.
Oh, I'd love to have you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, thanks for letting me take up so much of your time. I was like, oh, we'll do it in like an hour and a half, but 2.5 hours later, here we are.
Really close.
What's next for you? What are you doing today after this podcast?
I'm gonna try and do a test ride with my fat bike, and then pack it into a bag so I can fly and go race.
Yeah. So first test ride with all of your, like a loaded fat bike. This will be like your first test ride with it.
Yeah.
And then flying out to Sweden to go race
into
it.
the bike box. Yeah. That's the plan.
I love it. Well, good luck on Sweden and all of the other adventures. We'll catch up with you another time.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Jenny. Have a good day.
You too. See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.